Oh, okay. Wait. Now you can hear me. Uh-oh, I don't think you could have heard me before. That's not good at all. Oh well. Anywho, how's everybody? Mic works this time. That's for damn sure, huh? Oh man, the audio was all messed up on that last stream though. I don't know what happened. I hit go live and just everything fell apart all at once. Kind of feels bad, man. You know what I mean? Alrighty. Well, I figure I'm about ready to get into it. I'm trying to avoid getting copyright striked, so I'm trying like royalty-free stuff. I wish we could have a single YouTube VOD where I don't just immediately have it copyright striked and blocked in like 80 countries. That would be nice. But my dumbass likes to live out my radio host fantasies, so unfortunately, that is the price that I pay. However, I'm going to give you guys a little bit more jazz. I'm almost ready to go. I just want to go over my notes one more time. Today we're going to be covering Destiny's video that came out earlier today called Explaining My Moral System to Big Joel. I saw that there was some chatter about me covering it, so I figured I'd take a look. I don't think he did that bad. As a matter of fact, I kind of appreciate a change in tact that we're seeing in this video, but we'll go through that in a little bit. I, of course, will nitpick through the entire thing, so we're going to have about 50 minutes worth of video. That's probably going to turn into like 3 or 4 hours of chatter, so strap in, get ready, and I'll talk to you guys in a little bit. everybody. I hope y'all are doing well. What a great start. So I have some literally back of the napkin notes about what had happened in this conversation. I listened to the whole thing before because I'm looking for a change. I know that we've been playing this game of like...
Yes, I love this. For mysterious reasons, I love this.
Thanks. Thank you, Sign of Nine. I know that we've been kind of playing this game of don't watch the video before, and that way you have a genuine reaction and yada yada. I'm kind of over that at this point, so I figure I want to look ahead and see what happens so that I can have like a reasonable opinion. All right. So like I said, I finished the whole thing. I also watched him talk post-debate about it. I think it's good that he's including the post-debate stuff and sometimes pre-debate stuff because extra context for these conversations can be helpful. But at the same time, a criticism that I levied towards Jangle, it was in regards to how he edited together content that was meant to represent the whole of a debate. I worry that this is like, especially when it's at the beginning, priming somebody for what's going to happen. But, you know, he's been pretty responsible with it. I would say that this is something that could be used negatively at some point. So that's one thing that I'm keeping my eye to the ground for, is if that starts happening. But so far, not really. Let's go ahead and jump into this.
The reason why taxes suck, or why libertarian, I guess, might feel like taxes are theft, is because you only see one part of that.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let's go ahead and set it to 1 speed for you guys. Because I know you're slow. Prepared book is best book. Yeah, that is true. Oh, this is interesting, especially since I'm very much in Joel's camp. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's not very prepped. I mean, I just have like a few notes and timestamps so that I know when to pause and like what past me thought. And then I went outside and I did a little bit of smoking before I jumped on the stream to kind of reset myself. And now we're just going to take another look and see what's going on here.
The reason why taxes suck, or why a libertarian, I guess, might feel like taxes are theft, is because you only see one part of that exchange. I work and then the government steals my money. But what people don't see is the only reason why you were able to earn that money in the first place is because of taxes that had already been paid. So whether we're talking about basic shit and obvious shit like roads and schools, or whether we're talking about more abstract stuff like a military to defend your country, or larger bodies that organize trade between you and other countries, right? Like the only reason you're enabled to even earn any money in the first place is because of what your tax dollars have already gone towards paying for. So that's why I'm in favor of things like taxation. Like it's not just you getting robbed by the government, you're paying the government for a service that it provides you, but it's really easy to see the tax dollars you lose, and it's really hard to see the benefit the government provides.
Oh boy. Watching Decimate right now where he talks to a lady and she's like, so if someone breaks into your barn that's not attached to your house to steal a horse or something, do you have a right to kill him? And he says, yes, I do. Total personal property is such a... This guy's literally watching. This is a debate I had with White Nervosa like 2 years ago.
Okay, like... So the nitpicking begins. If I'm being honest, I don't think that this is... a very reasonable thing that he says here. So he opens up this video by kind of calling out how old the videos were and how weird it was that Joel was looking through them. And later on, when Joel tries to weasel out of like using the video for content or using the video as a, you know, to develop a tweet, I got weird vibes from it. So first of all, he still holds the same position, so it doesn't matter how old the videos are. So no matter what, it's not really a relevant thing, right? Especially since he still holds the opinions. Second of all, this is meant to throw some shade on the intentions of Big Joel, when I don't really think that's very fair to do. You don't have a lot of info to back that up. people watch videos all the time. And later on, Big Joel says that it just came up in his recommended. And honestly, I'd believe him. His decision to write a tweet after is technically like using it for content, as is accepting, the opportunity to go on live with Destiny. But I don't think it's fair to say that he like, or fair to imply that he like went out of his way to look at these videos and then manipulate his opinion in a way to where he's going to like make content out of it or whatever. I feel like the implication there's kind of cruel and unwarranted, but it's just my opinion on it. It came up in my recommended like 2 days after I discovered Destiny's channel. Yeah, I mean, like, this is a belief that he disagrees with a lot of people about. And in recent events, such as the Rittenhouse thing, like, that was a pretty important conversation that he had. And other conversations along those lines with other people, like I think maybe he had one, he had covered this topic with other people like Socked and Left or something. But he's talked about it a few times, and it's relatively, important. I don't know. And it doesn't matter how old it is. Again, no matter what, we can jump back to like, he still holds these opinions. So they're just as relevant today as they were 2 years ago. I think that this is like weird that he included this, but whatever.
Bring this up is like, remember when I said Destiny has a clear moral attachment to personal property that clearly transcends any utilitarian claim? And people were like, no, could not be. Just remembering this beautiful online moment. I don't know. Oh my God, he keeps saying it is so funny. This was 3 years ago.
Again, I don't think that it matters how old they are, especially since, again, the opinion is the same. And that's kind of the point of his tweet, is he was like, like maybe this wasn't, a good, showing of Steven, but then, he repeats it. Oh, like, yeah, Big Joel, this is something he actually believes in for sure. I don't think it's like crazy that it's 3 years old though.
This is my favorite estimate by far, because the whole time the lady is just like intensely reasonable. Like,
my read is the Destiny was just surprised this specific take was mentioned when he has much more recent and spicier takes on the property rights issue. Sure. But again, this guy wasn't going out plotting to like confront him about the take for the sake of like getting clout, right? If he was, then it would have been much smarter to open up with Rittenhouse. And I think even in this, like, confusion, the confusion is there because you're assuming he's doing this to clout chase or whatever. That's why it's confusing to you. To me, it makes perfect sense that he didn't start with the Rittenhouse thing, because he just stumbled upon the videos and got recommended them. He didn't like go out of his way to plan like an approach to talk with Destiny about this particular like thing. It doesn't seem like otherwise, yeah, he would have brought up the Rittenhouse stuff, right? So I think that just supports the other narrative, which I think is more reasonable, which is that he just kind of came across the videos one way or the other, but it doesn't seem like it was a big deliberate thing necessarily. And that could not be Destiny's implication here, but it feels like it is.
wait, so you think...
I can't wait to see the dissection of this one because it was so non-confrontational. Yeah, we're going to be comparing narratives and we're going to be comparing fundamental beliefs. So remember, it might be a good refresher that my personal belief is not that people have logical systems that they run their life through, as Stephen kind of forces people to do when he talks to them. He forces them to create some kind of logical explanation behind how they make decisions, and then to test that and to test theories through that, and then to like push them on why he believes what he believes and why he thinks what they believe doesn't work in all cases. I don't think that's really how people think. My thing is, I think everything is about perspective. Everything is about how many points you want to look at the same time and the connections you choose to draw between those points. So if I tell somebody to think taxation is theft, the government's doing this, yada, 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 I can create the perspective of a libertarian. But as soon as I start introducing other points, like the benefit we get as a society from taxation, the fact that all of our money comes from previous taxation, basically because we kind of established a lot of foundational services, exchanges, and like other things that, you know, are necessary. You know, as soon as you start including other points in that, the perspective kind of falls apart and you have to reestablish how these ideas connect to each other. But even then, you can be a really educated person that can hold all of these points in your perspective at the exact same time, but You could leave things out in the moment when you're in a conversation, or you could leave things out when you're making decisions like at the grocery store or something like that. We all have blind spots, right? And that's why I think perspective is an easier way of explaining how people like rationalize, because your perspective does narrow as you're not focusing on like these concepts, right? Like as you go into monkey mode and you return to monkey and you start like living your average life, there are major blind spots in your rational decision making because maybe you're not rational all the time, right? So that's why I view things that way. I just feel like it's flexible, more so than the logical thing. And it makes you feel less bad when people act stupid, right? Or irrational, because it's like, oh, obviously, yeah, because you can't focus on all the things at once and whatever. But when you assume everybody's logical and rational all the time, you're kind of constantly let down by people, and you think everybody's a hypocrite and nobody follows what they believe. And I feel like you're just setting yourself up for, feeling really sad about the behavior of like the people around you, when you could adopt another way of looking at the world that might, leave you a bit happier. So that's what I'll say on that. We have like a fundamental, disagreement about that.
I think just because they're stealing your stuff, they're forfeiting your right to life, like beyond self-defense. He's like, hell yeah, yes. Only watched the first 24 minutes so far. I'll let you know if you just absolutely want. Your view on that hasn't changed though, right? It's not, especially when he says words like utilitarian claim. Like, well, okay, let's run it down. Let's run it in a utilitarian manner. So let's assume that one action is good for like how all society can act in a way that optimizes everybody's well-being, okay? Let's say that I say that it's okay to break into people's barns because they'll never be met with lethal force, and you know that nobody will ever kill you for doing so. What kind of a society in a utilitarian world does that create? Every single time you think you can get away with stealing something from somebody's barn where the only thing they have is lethal force to meet you with, you can get away with it? Like, how does that even make sense if he wants to keep throwing around the word utilitarian? I'm fucking weeping. How on earth is this man at a hardcore ANCAP? I literally don't understand. Does he not understand that taxation is theft, as he's describing it, legitimized only by states' monopoly on legal violence?
Being polite is to at all costs
Are hundreds of hours with tax included.
And it feels like I have a
Like, I
much
feel
better
like-
chance of making that work by shutting up than by speaking.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I kind of feel like right here, this is more so making me feel like he's like trying to get clout or content or whatever, and not so much the very first tweet. Like by the time I got to this tweet, I would start being like, all right, Joel, you're tweeting an awful lot, bro. Do you want to just talk? Why are you putting all this on Twitter? Like, I see somebody else in the chat mentioning that Joel has tweeted about liking to watch Destiny videos before and stuff. Why didn't he just reach out then? I understand that privately a lot of people are afraid of talking to Steven, but I feel like if you do something like this, you have to know that he's going to respond to it. So you don't really avoid it very much. I don't understand that. But I'm trying to balance that with my other understanding of like streamers in private seem to be afraid of reaching out to like bigger streamers, or particularly Steven, because he's a, like I said, he's difficult to talk to, and I'm going to stand behind that. I'm not going to fucking wuss out of that position. I'm going to stick by that wording. He is difficult to talk to. So, a lot of people are afraid of that. I just don't see the point in tweeting all this, though.
Okay, bring him on. Bring him on. Hello? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh.
Yep. What's up?
He's analyzing all of his debates and giving him an informed perspective, AK per debate review. Dude, that would be so sweet of Steven if he like PayPal'd me an inordinate sum of money. Hey, dude, call me Book of 8K, dude. 8K per debate review.
By the way, just wanted to start off by saying when I'm watching your videos, debates late at night, I'm not like digging through your old material trying to dredge up some shit to say about you online. I just do it when it's late. I'm not trying to roast you, though I do find things that I am confused.
Now, I imagine that Steven, okay, so here's something that he's gonna say about like, I'm in mean mode now or whatever. I'm mean Steven in 2021. He's listening to rhetoric. I really feel like after the Vosh stuff and a few other conversations and maybe some talking with me, he's starting to realize that at the very least, if you're not going to care about your rhetoric, you should pay attention to the rhetoric of other people. Because what could happen is if you're only focused on logic, like oftentimes he would be with Vosh or with Vivian, and he kind of forgets about rhetoric in the moment, people can spin circles around him by just asking him questions that have a rhetorical benefit but no logical purpose, and he's going to miss that. So he could be losing an entire battle because he's choosing to like not look at that side of what's going on. And unfortunately, if you don't pay attention to that and people are really playing to like rhetorical and optical strengths, they can overwhelm any kind of logical argument you're trying to make. The only people that will still agree with you are going to be your diehard DGGers. But at that point, what is the purpose of these conversations if the only people that are going to come out agreeing with you are your diehard supporters, right? So I think he had to come up against that and against the limitations of that and start to, at the very least, consider what's going on there. So while he isn't necessarily being super careful with his own rhetoric all the time, he does seem to be much more attentive to how other people are using that, how other people are kind of laying the seeds for other implications while stuff is going on. And him pointing that out in real time has been really cool to see. We saw a bit of that in the last review we did.
About often. I like your debates. I don't know.
Okay, I'm just giving you a warning. So I'm actually a really nice person generally, but 2021 is the year of mean destiny. So I'm going to try to hold super accountable to what you're saying. So when you say you're not trying to dredge up old shit to get points, you realize that is actually exactly what you're doing on Twitter, right?
Oh, no. I realize that I'm totally doing that on Twitter. I'm not denying I'm doing that on Twitter. I'm just saying that.
And the other thing is, I really do feel like you can get much easier concessions from people. And something I talked about earlier in my career of doing these doing these debate reviews is kind of talking with people about, getting people in the habit of concession in a conversation is like lubing everything up for you, okay? It's going to make it much easier later for you to do all sorts of stuff, like trying to change their opinion on something, trying to explain when you have a disagreement. Everything becomes easier if that other person feels comfortable conceding with you. And I think both of them do this back and forth throughout the conversation. It really helps things go along so we don't get stuck. Now, there were a few loops that we did get caught in, but that's because these people have fundamental beliefs that they're not willing to change. And they're not really arguing by comparing those fundamental beliefs. They're kind of arguing around them. So that gets difficult.
It's not like I'm watching your videos headlong with the only desire to roast you.
Gotcha.
I watch many.
Oh shit! I'm streaming under Apex. My bad. Here, let me fix that real quick. Crap. That's my bad. Wait, why does it still say Apex? I thought I changed all the titles. Ugh. Oh man. Oh man. Hold on. I'm fixing it right now. How are you guys doing? Is everything okay? Is the audio okay? Should I turn it up? Let me know now or forever hold your peace. Just chatting. Done. Cool. It's fine. All right. Awesome. Is it this or did we do the other one? Do you guys prefer this view or this view? This is A. This is B. A or B? What are you thinking? A? A. Okay. A it is. A it is. All right. Overwhelming support for A. You love to see it, dude.
Somebody be going through like a 3-year-old video.
Oh, it just came up. Recommended. Anyway.
Oh, good. Well, the YouTube algorithm is doing work.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't understand why you're not like a straight up ANCAP. I'm not trying to debate you. I just don't get it entirely.
Wait, why would it be an ANCAP?
Well, because so in that conversation, do you believe everything you said there?
It's been a long time, but probably, unless my positions have changed.
Right.
Like, you can ask me like a particular stance, I can tell you what I think, or give me a quote.
So you said, I believe, I'm not trying to take you out of context. You said something along the lines of, if somebody goes into your barn that you're not in, or even if your family is safe, you see breaking into and taking private property, something that is so sacred, so evil, that they essentially deserve like a bullet in their head. Like they forfeited the right.
Sure. So let's restructure this a little bit so that it's not as inflammatory.
Yeah, let's go ahead and okay. I've noticed I have a bit of a rhetoric issue. Okay. the older years of Destiny are a bit, they're a bit dicey. So let's go ahead and filter this out. What I meant to say was
inflammatory so that you're not begging the question. So I think that if you give proper...
And what's funny is he veils this as like the other person is being incredibly unfair and stuff, and he keeps like a really like consistent tone, but that is so dangerous. This is like rhetorically adept at Destiny. Okay, so he's getting better at this. So start to listen for this as a viewer, because he has the same amount of confidence for like every point he gives, but not all of them are equally like in standing, right? Like what we talked about earlier and what we're about to see here. Like, let's go ahead and rewind back 10 seconds and give this a look.
Breaking into and taking private property is something that is so sacred, so evil, that they essentially deserve like a bullet in their head. Like they forfeited the right to life.
So let's restructure this a little bit so that it's not as inflammatory, so that you're not begging the question. So I don't
know if he's like really begging the question. Like he's kind of giving like exactly what he was saying. I don't know. Like this is the kind of stuff where like, I don't know, be careful, because if this is consistent through the entire thing, you might think he did better than he did just on the rhetorical level. So now that he's adept at that, we're going to point it out. This is good. This is good for Steven, but it's something that as an audience, just try to keep in mind, because I know you guys are filthy DGGers and you believe everything he says.
That if you give proper notice to somebody, and they know that their life will be on the line if they decide to break into your stuff and steal your stuff from you, that you have the right to defend that if using lethal force. Yeah.
Okay. So you think that stealing somebody's property does totally forfeit the right to life if due notice is given. Due notice meaning like get the fuck out.
And do you believe that if a person is strong enough?
Because notice that the only thing that was changed there is that due notice needs to be given. That's really the only change to be made. Yes, people stealing deserve to get a bullet in the head. That's, let's keep in mind that at a logical level, those two statements aren't different. At a rhetorical level, they most certainly are, right? But at a logical level, not really.
They should be able to infinitely steal from people weaker than them?
No.
And then he asked this, and this is because, and I have it written down here. Let me find it on the page. So they both have some fundamental beliefs. What I think that Big Joel's fundamental belief is that life is always worth more than property. So there should be no situation where a conscious being is able to make a decision and they choose to keep property over killing people. This is something we saw in the serfs debate, so that's why I'm projecting it onto this one. This feels like the exact same kind of place where people are coming from, where it's like it's unacceptable in any situation where you have the choice to just kill somebody over property. If you have the option and you're not going to get killed yourself, you should probably let them go, because no amount of property should be worth taking somebody else's life, right? And because they have that belief, it's very difficult for them to even be charitable and try to hear him out at the level of okay, well, a sandwich is different than my motorcycle is different from my house being burned down. It's difficult for them to go into that territory at such a small level when they've painted over all of these situations with a really big brush of morality to say that, no matter what, the life is going to be worth more than property, 99.9 times out of 100. So talking about the minutia feels very silly to them. And that is the vibe that I get behind a lot of these conversations that he's had. And that's why they're at such fundamentally different levels, because what Steven believes is he doesn't want to have a world where it's possible for stronger people to take from weaker people, right? And he doesn't like the idea of boxing everybody in morally to behave in that way, to just let stronger people get away with shit and hope that there is some kind of system that will catch them or reprimand them or make that right by the person. And eventually throughout the conversation, he'll give a few concessions in that direction, such as if we did have a universe in which the police could reasonably get your shit back or reasonably catch the people every time, maybe I could go in your direction. Maybe I wouldn't think that that's necessary because you could rely on the system. But even then, I don't know how I feel about just letting people go out and do that kind of shit. I don't remember this being a point that he mentioned before too much, but it seems that he's doubling down on this particular reasoning, so that seems to be what's important to him. He doesn't want that to be a possibility. And you can't really go in the police direction with him because he's ready with other arguments such as, like, what do you think the police are going to do if they can't subdue this person without lethal force? Then they're going to do lethal force. So we're kind of just kicking the can down the line, and it feels a bit, silly at that point or whatever. That's kind of my impression. They don't really ever get there too much, but yeah, that's a quick, brief summary on what I think is going on. I think Joel does a really good job in places of actually looking past the reasons he disagrees and moving towards seeking understanding of potential coherence, strange as it might look. Sure. Better to argue for irreplaceable property like family heirlooms rather than his saxophone. Yeah, but the problem is that he does believe that shit like a saxophone or a sandwich is worth it if he notifies you. So no, I kind of disagree. I am happy that they started things like that because that's ultimately where a conversation would go, right? Like, yeah, maybe you get him to agree at family heirlooms and you have a wedge into like his belief system and maybe you could do something else from there. But ultimately, he's never going to go as far as saying that those personal items that are like not worth a ton are going to be worth killing somebody over. So no matter what, I think that's a hill you're going to have to get over to bring the person fully to your side. I feel like you'll have to deal with that at some point or another. He elaborates on the value he puts on his saxophone after the debate. Maybe, but I'm not sure that matters. Anyhow.
Okay, so if somebody is breaking into somebody's stuff and you give a notice, hey, don't do that, but that person is stronger than the other person, so the only way they can defend is with lethal force. Do you
Thank you, the helium.
think they should be able to be infinitely stolen from if they're weaker?
I think that there's like structures that ought to be in place to prevent these things that don't necessarily revolve around like just somebody existing and being more.
Can you give me an example of that
powerful.
structure? I hope you're not about to say calling the police, because I'm pretty sure that if I were to go through your material, you would probably talk at some point about how calling the police can needlessly escalate conflict.
Oh no, I think that calling the police would probably be a good idea. I mean,
but what are the police going to do if the person fails to comply, ultimately?
What are the police going to do if the person fails to comply? Mm-hmm. Look, if somebody's breaking into your house, right? Mm-hmm. And let's pretend you have some sort of a. Okay, so I guess you're upstairs or they're in the barn, right? You remember? Do you remember that? You talked about them being in a barn.
Yeah, they're breaking into a place. It's not. There's the point of this analogy is there.
So this right here is a case called Catco v. Briney, 1971. And basically what happened was, because these two are going to fucking fumble the entire story, this really goes to show how memory is impacted a lot based on like how you're reasoning it, right? So both of them really thought their own arguments that they could pull out of this scenario, and they both describe it in very different ways. But I watched an entire thing before the stream so that I would know exactly what happened. So essentially what happened was this old couple had a house that was decrepit and they had inherited, and it had a bunch of shit inside of it, and people kept breaking into it. People were breaking in, people were stealing shit. They didn't live at the house, they inherited it, and it was like empty and vacant and kind of decrepit on the outside because, again, people were busting into it. They put a bunch of signs and shit trying to warn people off. They did everything that they could to try to keep people out, such as locking up a gate, but the people would bust the fuck in. So eventually, this old couple got so pissed that they rigged up a shotgun to a door handle. And what would happen is when you open the door handle, the shotgun would shoot, fairly low, not like up high, but down low, freak you out, maybe, bust a leg or something. And what they did was they also put a chair underneath the outside of that door handle. So if you went into that room, you really knew there were signs, there were locked gates, the house was locked, and you went out and you took that, chair underneath from that door handle before you pulled on it. And so these two fellas they break into the house, sure as shit, they fucking move the chair, open the door, and boom, his leg gets blown up. Eventually, the police get him. They fucking prosecute him for the larceny and whatever. But he's sitting there stewing about it. He's like, that's kind of fucked up that I opened that fucking door and got blasted. What if I was a fucking 6-year-old kid? I'd just be dead? Like, what the fuck? That's kind of screwy. This dude's fucking nuts. He just lays booby traps in a fucking house for people. That's kind of nuts. This feels fucked up. So he sued the people. And they ended up winning when he sued him because they said, hey, that's kind of indiscriminate and fucked. You weren't defending yourself. You weren't defending your life. And you weren't even there to defend your property. You set up an indiscriminate trap that anybody could have wandered into. And that ended up harming people. And, you know, if it wasn't him, it could have been somebody else. What would have happened if there was a fire at the house and firefighters needed to go inside to check if there were people? And it looks like maybe somebody barricaded themselves inside of this room and they go in there and they get their fucking leg blasted, right? Like, this is not ideal. You can't be laying booby traps all over the place. I'm not sure that that is self-defense, right? And so they gave them money. So that's what happened with this case.
There is no threat to life. They're breaking into something outside. Sure.
Okay, so probably I wouldn't think that it was good to... I would probably think that it was good to call the police. You mentioned that I'm critical of the police. I definitely am. I think that somebody needs to be there to preserve what people
But the weird
have.
thing is that if you call the police are ultimately showing up with lethal force, are they not?
Sure, if the person doesn't then comply and like start shooting at the police, I guess would be the idea. That's the only case in which the police should shoot somebody.
A bit idealistic here. The only case in which the police should shoot them is if they shot at the police. This is some like fucking laws of engagement in Afghanistan kind of shit. I don't think this is actually thinking very far ahead. Something that I pick up on later, about 46 minutes into the video, is sometimes this guy, Big Joel, he seems really cool, but sometimes he says stuff that's just, in a nice word, I would say it's not thoughtful. Like, he kind of says things that seem like very low-level ideas that if you thought critically about for 2 seconds, you might not say it. So yeah, sometimes he just says stuff that I'm not sure he thought too hard about from like the other perspective. And this is kind of one of them.
Well, not start shooting. It would be like resisting to the point to where the police aren't able to bring the person down in any other way besides escalating to lethal force, right? Which brings me back to my first question of if
Like, I'm known to be an overly idealistic guy, so I have sympathy for
the person
it.
is strong enough, should they be allowed to infinitely steal from weaker people?
Person is strong enough, should they be infinitely allowed to steal from weaker
Because that's the
people?
argument that you're making, because you keep throwing around like the utilitarian word. You're arguing that if somebody has sufficient strength, such that the only way to stop them is with lethal force, it's immoral to do so. So a person that's strong enough should be able to infinitely steal from weaker people.
Now, when he's saying strong here, he's skipping past a few low-level arguments to get to the definition of strong and whatever. Like, for instance, like, you're going to say, okay, well, you can't use lethal force because life is always going to be greater than property. In that case, then, like, if you can never use lethal force, then you need to subdue them with non-lethal. But to subdue somebody with non-lethal, you have to make yourself more powerful than them in some way. Now, this is not assuming that like the police have like non-lethal weapons that they could use. In Asia, we've talked about on stream before that the name escapes me because it is a foreign name. It's that kind of spear with the hook at the end. I think that those are something that I wish we had more in Western countries. I'm pretty sure if a lot of shopkeepers and stuff had that kind of thing on hand, like, you don't need to shoot people that have knives and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure you could subdue them with enough people and those tools and some basic training that you could give to people in like elementary school so that anybody can do that. But anywho.
That's the argument that
I definitely think that if somebody's like rampaging around, like destroying people's lives and the like.
No, we're not talking about destroying people's lives.
Destroying people. Well, destroying people's livelihoods, destroying people's. As you.
And note there, destroying people's lives. He actually goes in on it. He's paying a lot of attention to the way that this dude is trying to frame
would
things.
say the essence of their lives, which is, you know, they buy it with their life force. You did the whole thing in the debate.
I don't even. It doesn't even need to be that intense. It could just be like a fun motorcycle that you drive on the weekends in your garage.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely say that at some point, detaining that person should be a high priority.
Kagiyari. Maybe. I know it's called something else, and it has a native word that I thought had an S. I thought it was like Samiyik or something. Here, let me look it up. Man catcher, catch pole. Oh, a Sasumata. That's what I'm thinking. Sasumata. That's what I'm talking about. So if you want to look that up, that Sasumata is what I'm thinking about. That was the word I thought of.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just trying to be
of
really clear.
detaining
'Cause
that person.
we keep going into things like rampaging. I'm not talking about rampaging. I'm talking
Well,
about
infinitely stealing, I thought you were saying. I'm sorry, I took it from the infinitely stealing.
Well,
from
when
the
I say
weak,
infinitely
right?
stealing, what I'm saying is you're crafting this kind of like moral rule saying that you can never defend your property with lethal force, assuming that a life isn't over.
Right.
And so my
Yeah,
question
yeah.
is that if somebody knows that, because now you've crafted that, you want to talk utilitarian, so we've got this rule utilitarian outlook, and we have a rule for society that says you can't defend property with lethal force. Could a sufficiently large man just go to people's houses, break in, steal what he wants, and then when somebody's like, yo, stop, I'm going to shoot you, and the guy's like, you can't do that, dude, that's immoral, and then walk away with all your shit. Yeah.
So in this particular hypothetical, this man is he's from like Baki or something, like an anime where he's so buff and powerful that any sort of attempt to detain him or arrest him non-lethally would be out of the question. He's just much too buff and powerful for that. Is that it? Is that the idea?
So while that is the idea, I'm going to take issue with your framing because it is very hard to detain a person. This is why multiple police officers will be involved in this, and it's very likely that a person is able to be large enough to present like some sort of lethal threat to people trying to detain him. So I agree with what you're saying in terms of how you phrase it, but the tone that you're using makes it sound highly improbable when it's absolutely not improbable.
See, look at how much attention he's paying to the little things now. He's become a rhetoric Andy. I'm so proud of him, dude. Thanks for the follow, Leo. Yeah, I'm really appreciating this new arc.
Plenty of people that steal things are going to be larger than the people they're stealing.
He said he's going to be mean Destiny, but it sounds like he's just Destiny who's like being critical of other people's rhetoric now.
I think that there is a moral duty to make attempts to detain them non-lethally before lethal force is applied if your life is not in danger. That's what I would say.
Sure. So my question
was that a little thing though? Joel went really hard on that point. Joel was trying to get a grasp on what the fuck this guy was talking about. What do you mean somebody who is the strongest man in the world and nobody can, like, come on. Steven had the same amount of absurdity in describing what he was talking about. I feel like, if anything, Joel was just riffing off of exactly the same thing that Steven said. I don't think that was Joel going hard on a point or anything. I feel like he was literally saying what Steven said.
Let's say somebody, and I believe this to be a very reasonable example, okay? Because police don't show up instantly, okay? Let's say that I have a sign, so I'm putting someone on notice. I have a sign in front of a garage that's...
Like, obviously it had rhetorical, like, digs at Steven, but it's exactly the same thing that he said. It's just, it sounds funny because he said anime character.
Says, if you cannot run my gun or some whatever the redneck fucking signs are about lethal force. I've got a sign there, okay? And a guy goes up to my garage. He can read it. He knows the risks. And he says, I'm going to break into this garage and steal this dude's shit. Let's say that I see him, and I see him break into my garage, and I know that if he gets into the garage, he's going to ride off with my motorcycle. And I tell him, hey, stop. I'm calling the cops. I'm going to shoot you if you get on my bike and ride away. Am I obligated morally to just watch him ride off with my thing because I don't have the physical strength to perform him?
Yeah, absolutely, right? You don't think that you have the moral obligation to watch him ride away with your bike? You don't think that...
And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. So in Booksmart's perspective theory, they both have one point that they cannot eliminate from their perspective at all. Steven's one point is that he does not want his logical system or his moral system or whatever the fuck you want to call it, ethical system. He doesn't want that to allow for one strong individual to go ahead and trample on the private property of all of these other weaker individuals. He doesn't want one strong person who, by virtue of the ethical system you've created, is able to just go on a rampage and steal a bunch of people's shit and more or less get away with it, because every single individual he comes across is not able to adequately stop him from doing what he's doing. And you have to rely on outside systems. You have to hope that the police are good. You have to hope that the government is good. You have to hope that private property is protected by some other means so you can offload that from the individual. And that's not even going into, if we're talking about a perfect world, I would think that the police wouldn't even apply lethal force. So, we get into weird territory, and that's not what that's what he's not comfortable with. He's not able to accept that at all. For the other person, this idea that at any point the life of somebody is worth less than your individual little bit of property is just going to be unacceptable, like all of the time. It's very difficult for him to think of a scenario in which the property would be greater than that, right? In his calculus, the life is worth so much that if that life is not threatening your life, or that life is not posing like a great enough risk to the whole of society, then that life should be allowed to go on, right? If we have the option to delay until such a time when we can like take that person or reprimand them in a way that doesn't cost them their life, then that's what he wants. He also probably wants to avoid some kind of like, I am judge, jury, and executioner in my living room because you just walked on the wrong porch, motherfucker. That's what he doesn't want as well, right? But it's mostly this idea of the life being greater than like innumerable amount of property. So it's like, it's very difficult to imagine scenarios in which that belief is challenged. And that's kind of where I think both of them are at. Those 2 points, they're never going to give up on.
Yeah, I would absolutely say yes. You have the moral obligation to not take his life.
So
right?
then,
That's
okay,
what I would
gotcha.
say.
So then, backing up to what I said before, then you think that strong people should be able to infinitely steal from weaker people.
Do I think they should be? No, I think they should be prevented from doing it.
How do you
for
prevent
sure.
all theft?
How do you prevent all theft? Well, I would hope that there be some kind of a legal system in place.
I don't think that that's super fair of a question either. And this guy's going to keep going back to institutions. He's just going to use the copy pasta institution meme to take care of any of these problems. Now, I can't say whether or not that works or not. That's up to you guys. But that's his solution, is he's going to keep falling back on institutions.
Okay, I'm trying to be very gentle, okay? And I'm going to inform you that you are speaking from an area of unbelievable privilege if you think
I like the slight rhetoric change on him becoming an asshole. I like it. I like that there's a bit of a disclaimer here.
the police give a fuck about any type of normal burglary or theft, okay? As somebody that has had my car broken into and stolen from multiple times, police are never tracking down like fucking TVs or instruments or anything like that, right?
No, and they don't really track down people that hurt other people either, really, unless you hurt them like really, really bad. Like, I think I've talked on stream before about how a lady like hit me with her car when I was doing security, and she fucked up my back, and she just ran away, and she just kept running away, and they caught her. And then they were like, all right, we're going to let you go because we don't have a lot of space. Don't you run away again. And she ran away. And she ran away from a bunch of other shit before that too. So I don't know why they keep letting her go, but there you go. You know, it happens. The police kind of really, really suck for all sorts of shit. If it doesn't benefit them or the prosecutor, I don't know how the fuck. I don't really know the fucking politics of it, dude, but it feels like they don't do shit.
Sure.
In your world, actually, hold on.
Chat's kind of dense today. Well, you are in the YouTube chat.
Cross a bridge here and meet you halfway. If there were a world where every possession was guaranteed to be returned by the legal system, I think I might agree with you. So let's say
not even that.
Fucking TVs or instruments or anything like that, right?
Sure.
In your world, actually, hold on. I'm going to cross a bridge here and meet you.
I love this. I love this from Steven. I had to go back and make sure that I pointed this out. I really love this from Steven. Look, he's trying to build bridges. He's not trying to burn them. You guys think he's a drama frog. He's not a drama frog. Look at this. He's going for agreement. I really like this. This is a good turn for him. So here he is. He's trying to say, hey, look, let me strongman that for you. If I were to have this in that same society, maybe I could agree with you. If the institutions were so strong and reliable to XYZ point, then I could agree with you. That's a concession that I could make. And he just pulls that out of thin air. That's great.
What is this?
Thank you, some Dominic. So that's great. I appreciate that. That's wonderful.
Halfway. If there were a world where every possession was guaranteed to be returned by the legal system, I think I might agree with you. So let's
not
say,
even that. If there was a world wherein it was, I hope you would agree. If it was at least highly probable or even likely, I would hope you would agree.
Now, this Big Joel is going to try to bite off a little bit more than this. So what Destiny is proposing initially is 100% idea, right? And Destiny is a man of extremes. He likes talking and thinking in extremes, right? He likes to think about, like you talked about, the infinitely robbing, infinitely strong Ubermensch, right? Or whatever the fuck. That's what he's talking about there. he's a man that likes extreme shit, okay? And so he's going to go extreme here, and he's going to say, if they can 100% recover stuff, maybe then I could agree with you. And what Big Joel is going to come here and do is, yeah, but like 90%, or yeah, but like 85, like an A or B average, kind of institution. Like, you'd be okay with that though, right? Right? He's trying to break that 100 to at least get down a little bit, because I personally don't think there's any point in talking in absolutes a lot of the time. I think it does unveil something about your thought process, but I think what's more helpful is exiting those extreme zones, because I don't think you often live in extreme zones. And sometimes your opinion on something changes when it's 100 to 99. Like for me, there are a lot of things that are 100 to 99. One philosophical belief I have that's really cringe is if you put a button in front of me to like get rid of all of the humans on Earth, I would probably push it, but I would only push it if it would for sure get rid of like every single one all at the same time with like no problemos. Just because I don't like that humans are on Earth, but that's like a personal thing. Anywho, like I think there are arguments that change from 100 to 99.9, and so that's why I think it's important to like try to move people out of that when they present you an argument that only works at that extreme.
In this world, no, absolutely not. If some
Anti-natalist extremist book smarts, yikers.
No. I'm saying if it not just a perfect, but even if there was like a 50%, what's the odds for you? At which
it would have to be
you
95% chance plus. 50% is not good enough.
Dude, that's
You would kill us? I would vanquish your consciousness, but only if it's all of you at once. So don't worry. That's probably not ever going to happen.
crazy high to me. I don't know.
Why do you think that stronger people should be allowed to walk in and steal things from weaker people?
I like how chat's just like freaking out now.
I don't think that they should be allowed to walk in and steal
But
things.
if the
from weaker
only
people.
option is using lethal force to take the person out or watching them take your stuff, why should a stronger person who knows exactly what they're doing and they're fully aware?
Like, if we're talking in Naruto terms, I would put you all in the fucking tree at the end, and I would just wait for you to like die of old age inside your little cocoons. Like, that would be pretty pog. I'd probably press the button on that one. Just wander around and enjoy nature for a little bit. I'd save a bunch of gasoline and just go on a really long motorcycle trip and enjoy nature as things fall apart. That'd be pretty pog. I don't know.
Aware of the situation. Why should that person be allowed to steal from somebody weaker than them?
I would honestly say that it's important to like write down their license and report them to the proper authorities. I don't think that your motorcycle. So you ask, is it okay? You're right. You give the hypothetical. Is it okay for infinitely strong people to steal from weaker people?
They know
right?
the police aren't going to show up in time.
You'd be gone too. I mean, if I'm gone too, that's fine. I always just assume that I would be unfortunately left on the earth to wander around. But yeah, if it got rid of me too, that's equally pog. That's even better.
Yeah, they're just going to break in and steal shit. Yeah.
Sure, but I would just say, like, does that give you? I just because they shouldn't have the right to do that doesn't necessarily give you the right to murder them, right?
Well, hold on. Wait. Let's be careful. Not murder, but kill.
Okay, kill. Sure, execute.
I know that for the argument to be correct, he has to fight on it because murder is adding an extra kind of like legal and moral baggage to things that he doesn't want to have on the word. But it is kind of funny. It does sound funny.
Them, sure. Right.
Let's just say kill, okay? Because the other two words are really loaded, and I think kill gets across the point of what we're
Rhetoric
talking
Steve,
about, right?
dude.
And I'm being nice
Rhetoric
and kill because
Steve.
I could say defend your property with legal force, but we'll say kill somebody. Sure.
Sorry,
If you
defend your
inform
pro- I don't-
somebody, sure, you inform somebody like, hey, if you get on that and steal my shit, I am going to kill you. You warn them of that, and they fully understand that. They fully are aware of that. And then they hop on your bike, and they're like, yeah, fuck you. Like, you're small, I'm big, peace out. And they just ride away. You're just supposed to sit there and be like, well, fuck, he's right. I guess he just gets to steal my shit.
So, like, what's the line for you? Like, if you're, like, eating a sandwich and, like, somebody comes up and starts to take the sandwich and you're like, if you grab it any faster, I'll murder. Like, there has to be a line somewhere,
No,
right?
so my...
Let's pause right there. Now, here is something that Steven is really not good at. Do you remember how before I talked about how he likes to think in extremes and that the extremes are helpful to like see a certain angle of somebody's belief, but they're certainly not indicative of the way they reason through the other, like, you know, if we're talking about extremes in terms of percentage, like if we're only talking about what happens at 0 and 100, I'm not sure how indicative that is of percentages 1 through 99, right? Because there could be a lot of variance there that we're not necessarily getting through these extremes. He doesn't recognize that for a lot of people, they need discretion to be something that is like readily apparent to them. So what Big Joel is trying to establish here is there's some kind of discretion, right? Like, where is the discretion in murdering people over property? Like, you know, you have to have some kinds of like boundaries, or you have to have something in between, right? You have to have some like outline or some like sense of like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't kill them over this, or I probably shouldn't kill them over that. That line is somewhere. And if Big Joel can find that line, then he has a baseline and he can know how far he can push one way or the other. But up till now, it just sounds like Steven's okay with, as long as he notified you and you're trying to take his property, he can murder you. And that doesn't, or he can kill you, right? And that doesn't, I'm sweat snitty here. He can kill you because you stole his stuff, right? And we have no idea of like what kind of stuff, what level of stuff. How are you determining, like, how are you drawing lines there, if at all?
Understanding would be is if the other person is aware of the risks of what they're doing, then they necessarily consent to any and all outcomes that are going to be enacted on them when they violate another person's.
And this is how he responds to a question about discretion. So he asked them, you know, you wouldn't like over a sandwich or something, right? Like you wouldn't say, I can just threaten you over the sandwich, and right? And he goes, if I warn you, and I'm pointing the, so here we have some slippage in the rhetoric here. This isn't super great.
Whether it's their personal space, whether it's their boundary, whether it's their body.
Oh, Rage Pope, 81. Wow. Thanks, Rage. What were you guys talking about? I'm sure a bunch of fun stuff. I stole his paperclip and got my brains blown out. Yeah, but you would have gotten your brains blown out after he warned you. So that's your dumbass fault for fucking gambling your life on a paperclip. You know that motherfucker's crazy, bro. He'll blow your brains out. No doubt. Kill is the correct word. To murder, you would be the aggressor first. And most of the time, murder is pre-planned. Otherwise, sometimes it becomes manslaughter. Yeah, but in people's mind, I think that when they feel that a killing is unjustified or a killing was done like knowing that you're going to kill the other person with the desire to kill the other person, I think they use murder like offhandedly. But yes, I understand it's important, like I said before.
Yeah, 100%. Because the alternative to that is saying I have to be okay with strong people infinitely robbing weak people. Because, hey, you can't respond with lethal force, and you're never going to fight the guy because now you're putting yourself at danger. So, yeah, of course. Fucker. But like in our two extreme worlds, like in the world that you've made, any strong person can steal from any weak person ever, as long.
What if the button to remove all humans from Earth, but also removed all books from the Earth? That would not change my decision whatsoever.
Because I feel like the cops won't get there in time. In my world, people can't steal people's shit without somebody potentially responding with lethal force. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. Now, it would be pretty crazy and pretty shitty if people were killing each other over sandwiches, but I have a hard time believing that people are going to try to steal sandwiches from people knowing that they'll kill them if they take them.
Sure, I mean, obviously.
And here's another assumption that I think is proven right here that he knows is not the truth, which is that people generally understand that if they're stealing something, they're gambling away their life. I would argue, and this guy doesn't, but I really think that you should get pushback here. I don't think everybody has that expectation. Like, if somebody were outside of my office right now and they were trying to, steal a car, like, that's in the parking lot, I don't think that they expect that I would come outside and kill them. I don't think that that's an idea in their mind. Now, maybe if they lived somewhere different, maybe if we were in the hood or we were where Steven is from, maybe that would be a thought in his head. But I'm not sure that a lot of people stealing shit think that they're going to get murdered. Maybe if you're burglarizing people in America where guns are a thing, you think that. But at least around here, probably not, especially if you're outside or something. There's a lot of circumstances in which I don't think this is the truth. And this is a kind of thoughtless thing that Steven is saying here, because I really feel like this assumption is challenged in all sorts of circumstances, but I'm not sure Big Joel gives a ton of pushback on it.
it's unlikely. I guess. Okay.
But that's why the being notified part is important. Yeah, but remember that being notified thing exists independently of this other thing. Like, he's trying to get past the notifying thing by slipping in that I would assume that most people understand that if they, do something, then they are going to get shot over it. Like, he's trying to slip that in extra. I understand the notification thing, but that is a separate argument from this assumption here. I'm saying this assumption is probably not a good one to hold in your mind. I'm not sure that's an accurate assumption to make.
Honestly, the real reason I wanted to talk to you, it's not necessarily related to.
So look right there, Estus Flakes. You're saying breaking in, but the thing here is not breaking in, it's stealing something. If you're breaking in, maybe I just said that, but if you're stealing, I'm not entirely certain. I really don't think somebody stealing in the parking lot outside would expect me to kill them. I don't think that that's the truth. And I've known a lot of people who steal shit, okay? Steven can talk about people who have stolen stuff from him. I've known a lot of people in my life who have been thieves. And I can tell you that none of those people, in all but the most extreme of circumstances, thought that they were going to get killed. They never thought that. So I will say that in the mind of a thief, I don't think they're often thinking that, well, this might be the one. And it's difficult to argue that in real time with Steven, but as I'm reviewing this and taking the time, I will tell you that. I don't think that's a reasonable assumption to make. Hey, Books, up, dude? What's up, Dylan? They don't expect lethal force if caught? No, I don't think so. I think they expect they can escape, or at least they could try to. They're thinking a lot of other things, but this is not what they're thinking. I don't think what's on the forefront of their mind is that they could be killed. Could be a Southern/Midwest thing. It could very well be. And that's why I like to give the caveat, maybe where Steven lives, it's different. Where I live in Southern California, if you're breaking into a car outside, I think you are crazy if you think somebody is going to come outside with a gun and shoot at you in the street. That's not going to happen, right? You would have to be in some pretty rough areas around even where I live to have that happen. I don't think that's a reasonable thought in people's minds. If you go into a Walmart and you steal a bunch of shit in your hoodie, I don't think you think that the security guard at the front is actually going to like draw a gun and shoot at you. I don't think that's a thought in your mind, even if the possibility is right in front of you. I think for a lot of people, this is the case. Even when police come, I think that a lot of people that commit crimes, even though they know that police kill people, even though they know what you have to do to get killed by the police, even though they know these things, still don't think it's going to happen to them. They still don't think if I resist arrest here that I'm going to be the one that's shot. If I just drive away, maybe they chase me, maybe I get away. They're not thinking that they're going to be in a standoff and they're going to get shot, or the officer is going to think that you're driving into them and he's going to unload into you. I think a lot of the times when people are doing things that clearly are going to justify lethal force, it's not on the forefront of their mind that is going to happen to them, which is why I think this is a very important assumption to challenge. And that's why if I keep seeing it in the chat, I'm going to challenge you on it. I don't think that's a good assumption to be creating like moral systems around. I don't think it makes sense.
Convincing you that you're wrong about your property stake. I was actually just more curious about your other beliefs, if that's okay.
Sure.
Like related to that.
Sure.
What I mean is, why do you draw the line at a person? Oh, okay. Here's what I want to ask. If I stand in my house and say that any tax collector who comes and tries to take what I've properly earned, I'll kill them on the spot. Does he have the right to kill the tax collector?
I think arguably he could, but then at that point, I think the state has a right to kill that person.
Yeah, and to be clear, when you notify them, the situation becomes different. But this assumption exists independently of the notification. That's how it was said.
I think that as a society, we're by force, whether you like it or not, we're bought into certain concepts that allow society to run and function. One of those things is the collection of tax revenue in order to ensure like the safety and security of people that exist within the state. If you don't like that, you just have to get the fuck out and leave. If you believe that you don't owe any type of obligation or you don't owe any type of debt to society, then you're not compatible with the society as it exists today, and you need to leave.
You're certainly not compatible, but if I was a libertarian, right, which I think you used to be, right?
I think that Steven is what I would call a governmental fatalist. The government has fatally happened to everybody born in this society, and no matter what, unfortunately, this is the way the game is set up, and you're going to have to play it that way no matter what. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that there are a lot of other people online that are almost the opposite. They're like governmental reformists or whatever, revolutionaries, some may say, and they just think they can flip that shit around. Kind of interesting. Tax bad. Yeah, bro, tax bad.
Maybe
Tax
like when I was
theft.
17,
No?
maybe. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have seen you talk about it or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
To me, when you say, can the infinitely strong person infinitely steal from the weaker people, is that not the state? I mean, is that not the state embodied? Is not what they do thievery
No,
of your
absolutely
possessions?
not. The state is a
Yeah,
body
why?
that's entrusted with power by the people in order to enact something that ideally should be for the benefit of society. Now,
You didn't entrust them.
What?
You didn't do that, right? You didn't entrust them with anything.
I'm bought into the concept of how our government and our society runs. I might not always agree with it, but like as a society, this is how things are structured, and this is ideally for how most people want to be ruled. I mean, now like theoretically, if I lived in a society where they made it legal and they said, well, no, people can steal shit from you, then like, yeah, I guess I would have to play by those rules too. But
I don't feel like, so you feel like but you didn't have to
Manufactured consent? Yup.
consent to the way our society operates to have to pay taxes.
Correct, but I think I think there's a form of ongoing consent that happens as a result of you existing in society. We can take like antinatalist argument, say you never consented to being born or whatever, which is kind of true. But I think once you're in a society, you kind of have to play by some collective rules. Do you really think that an individual stealing something from you for personal gain is the same as the same as the state taxing you?
Do I think it's the same? No, I think one is bad and one is good.
Yeah, okay, I would argue the same thing, of course.
But
That's another good attempt at reframing, and it ended up being successful here, right? Like, well, hold on. Let me make sure that my assumption here isn't correct. You don't think that blah, 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 right? And then he gets, an easy concession. And this is something that happened earlier on, too, when he confronted him about, well, you did watch that, and you did put out the tweet, and you did, like, whatever. And then the guy immediately gave in, right? Getting in the habit of those concessions is going to help the conversation go along, and that's the case here.
But I would say that it's fundamentally, the way you were talking, you want to...
I think the tax analogy is not great. I don't think it's very great either. I think that it's a curveball that just might normally work with people. It's just not really going to work with Steven. If somebody, remember, I talk about perspectives, and this is why, as I feel like it can explain the situation visually very, very well. So remember that I said that in my theory of how people like rationalize through things, it's about how many points of like information or beliefs they hold in their mind at a single time, right? And here, what he's trying to do is he's trying to introduce a new argument that would normally not be held in frame at the same time as these other points. And what he's hoping is that your inability to like reconcile the way that interacts with everything will throw you off and will force you to think about it, or will maybe force you to concede on the point, right? But Destiny's brain doesn't really work like that. Steven's very adept at like working things in and passing them through like a set of like beliefs that he already has. So what he does when he's presented with something like that is pass it through, and he's able to calmly, explain why it's not similar most of the time, right? He freaks out other times, because that window kind of narrows as he becomes frustrated. Same with all of us. But when he's calm and when he's trying, he can definitely work something in with all the other points and make something sensible out of it. But not everybody can. So something like this could be a curveball to other people.
The way you were talking in that debate, right? You were acting like the very act of owning something is this extraordinarily sacred act which can be impeached by nobody else upon risk of death, right?
No, not at all.
That
Of
is a
course not.
rational response
It's
to it.
more so that like I respect and I value the autonomy of people such that somebody else can't violate that for their own personal gain. I think there's a big difference between like a state collecting taxes for the betterment of society, hopefully. There's a big difference between that versus an individual that's just trying to rob you of your autonomy or rob you of your possessions for their own personal gain. I think those two things are very, very, very different.
See, so he's going to jump to, well, no, the reason why that doesn't fit in, the reason why that's disanalogous is we're talking about a government, an institution, a group of people that have all kind of bought into this central idea, and that is taking money from you versus an individual who came to you as an individual and took things from you. And it's that distinction between an individual and a large group or an institution that Stephen is going to point to here.
Why?
Have a good night.
But it's literally stealing because you want to build a library. I mean, what's the difference?
The difference is that in order for our society to function in the way that it does, all of the people in that society have to be bought into a few key concepts, and people that don't buy into those are incompatible with that society. So for instance, if you're somebody that thinks that they don't have to follow laws like related to murdering or whatever, you're not compatible with the society. You have to leave. If you're somebody that and like taxes are a fundamental and instrumental part of how society works. We have to be able to collect taxes. If you don't think that you need to pay those or you don't ever want to be involved, then you just have to leave. There's no place for you here. Our society.
I mean, there's no place for you anywhere. There's literally no place for you in this world, obviously, except for, I guess, like...
Yeah, you can like go move into the forest like the Unabomber or some weird thing.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I would agree that there are some parts of the social contract who say that you probably wouldn't work anywhere in the world. If you thought you could rape and murder with impunity, there's probably not going to be any society for you. Yeah, you're just going to be incompatible everywhere you go. So yeah, I would argue that.
This is literally a social contract. They should just read political theory to learn about this stuff. Well, leveling, they're going to talk about that. So maybe you shouldn't assume that, the reason the convo isn't going how you think it is because they're stupid or they don't know what you know. Because joke's on you, fucking big ass Ducker Z, they're going to talk about that. So kind of feels weird, man.
The person that thinks they don't owe any debt whatsoever to society in terms of their work or like by paying taxes or whatever, that person's probably not compatible with society. They need to either be kicked out of or leave that society or go find some other place to do things. Yeah.
Just read theory, bro. Yeah, I'm not even going to go for the low hanging meme there. I'm just going to... I'm just gonna walk past it.
Taxation is like it's I wouldn't consider it theft. Like it's a justified it's complete. I think it's completely morally justified. You get a lot of benefits from society. You have to pay a debt back to that society as well. That's how society functions. Stealing is not at all comparable to taxation.
So I guess.
And then he goes at the moral level as well. I think it's morally justified, and I think that the other kind of theft is not morally justified.
What you're saying is that you think that these are all aspects of the moral contract, right? You enter into a contract with society, etc.
Oh, there you are, leveling.
So, and if I asked you what legitimizes an amendment to that contract,
you're telling everybody to read, but you need to go outside and talk to people, bro. You gotta chill out.
The amendment being one must give back to society if one is to participate in its pleasures, whatever. What legitimizes an amendment like that, or whatever you want to call it, is utilitarianism. You'd say, right?
I mean,
you'd say it's for the greater good for the greatest number of people. That's what makes it a legitimate amendment on the contract.
Kind of. I mean, I think.
Oh no, it's not.
Well, I think you can get there. No, I mean, I think you can get there consequentially or deontologically. I don't know if it's like necessarily relevant that we have to be utilitarian to make these statements.
Oh, I'm just asking.
And right here, I felt like when they go into philosophical terms, like this person in chat wants them to do, it's really boring to me, and it seems really silly and stupid, and you don't really ever get anywhere with people when you do that because everybody's convinced that they're right. But I feel like it feels like this scene from fucking Star Wars. That's what you're doing when you like they're like talking like normal people and they're going back and forth, and then they start doing philosophy stuff. There's like the fucking tire left the pavement, bro. We got no power. What's going on? This conversation's going nowhere. It's so boring. That's what I feel like, dude. I don't know. That's what popped into my brain.
Why what about these amendments to the social contract do you think legitimizes them? I'm not saying they have to be legitimized.
Oh,
in
sure.
any
Well,
way.
okay. So for me personally, I want to have the best world possible for myself. That's my number one priority. And the way that I think that happiness or good things are created is generally in union or in harmony or in cooperation with other people. So I need to be wanting to make a perfect world for myself. I need to enter into contracts with other people that I would imagine want to make perfect worlds for themselves. And then all of us are going to come to forms of mutual agreement that kind of protect each other's interests because we work better in groups than we do as individuals. Two humans together will create more happiness than two humans separated. So from that...
Jesus, look at him. He's fucking walking it down, dude. He's got this. He's fucking rehearsed it, dude. You're fucking with the GOAT. He can explain everything. This is impressive because I know that I can't do this at all. I really appreciate that he's able to do this.
I would
kind of
build out
stuff.
these kind of like basic understandings of like, hey, well, we don't steal from each other, we don't kill each other, we don't take advantage of each other when we could, because any personal gain that we might have by violating any type of social contract like that is going to be negated when somebody else violates a social contract like that. So from that, we would build out systems and institutions to protect these norms that we would respect from one another. And then in order to establish and in order to maintain these institutions or norms, we would have to collect things like taxes. And again, like everybody needs to be bought into these concepts. If you're not, then you're kicked out because you're not compatible with that society. That's how
Like, this is the kind of tone that he takes when he's trying to explain stuff to people after he had like an awful debate performance, or after he like screamed at a viewer call in for like 45 minutes, right? Like, he tries to cool off and he tries to explain the fundamentals of his beliefs. And I feel like when he introduces that more often into a discussion and he takes on that calmer tone and he really walks through something and he makes sure that the other person is on board at each step of the, at each step of the process. And he does the same exact thing when he's trying to confirm what they believe and he's getting their approval at every step of the process. I feel like you guarantee progress in the conversation in a way that he can't when he's being super inflammatory. So every time he does this kind of stuff, I really like it.
I would be.
Okay, it sounds like you're agreeing with me that it basically comes down to the amendments in the
Activate Windows, please, when I move, dude.
Contract are good by virtue of the fact that they make the most people the most happy, including you.
Yeah, I would say
whatever.
so. Yes, yeah.
I feel like the distinction is whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just
So I
making sure we
guess-
understood from the ground up. But yes, that's what I would say. Yeah.
I guess what I would say is that regardless, returning to the thing which I started this off on, regardless of any theoretical question of whether or not an infinitely strong man can steal from weak people forever, am I okay? No, I'm not okay with that. But what I would say is that I don't agree with the idea that one of the amendments in our contract should be stealing. You should, if you're told to go fuck off, I guess you think they have to have a gun or something. They have to display their lethal force. You probably think that.
Yeah, you should. The other person needs to be put on notice. I think that's important that the other person's put on notice.
Okay.
So, for instance, I'm not in favor of people that defend private property, like open lands, with like the fucking razor wires hung between the trees.
Which is an interesting point to keep in your mind when later we talk about that court case, when later we talk about Catco v. Briney, because remember that he set up a booby-trapped shotgun that was indiscriminate of who would have wandered onto the property. So that's an important note for that case.
That decapitate kids that drive by, or like you sitting in your fucking barn waiting to snipe some dude that unintentionally wanders onto your property. I don't think that that's okay because the other person isn't aware that they're being like risking that much.
Sure. Yeah, I would say that basically it's a bad deal when it comes to society at large, is what I would argue. I would argue that it is in general a pretty bad deal to every time somebody steals with, I guess there's a lot of edge cases here which we could get into, but whenever anybody steals
I think I can be wholly consistent.
Whenever anybody steals from somebody who has a gun, who notified them of their lethal intent before they shot them, and who gave them... And here's the other thing. This is something that I would add in, because here's my assumption, is that Stephen initially conceived of the idea that I'm able to use lethal force on anyone stealing. And I think that was flat out the idea, the way it started, the inception of it. And then he had to add a caveat of notifying, particularly after the Vosh conversation. You have to notify them. So he's including that. I think that's an amendment. And if we're able to amend for giving somebody notification, I think that an extra itty bitty little like 2% change, or to, maybe give a small percentage for Steven because he likes small percentages, maybe like a 0.5%, 0.05% change, that you give them a chance to escape or to disengage. Like, the assumption is that when you put somebody on notice that, you're going to kill them, that would be the moment that they have that. But I think that, like, honestly, giving somebody an out and making sure that that's explicit in your presentation of the argument might get people on your side more. Making clear that you gave that person an out, that you like gave them a way where they could leave that situation with their life, and you made that clear to them as well as, your intent to kill them, might be helpful, but it might be nitpicky. I don't know. For me, at least, I think that that's important. Like, in your threat, I wonder if instead of painting it as like drop it or I'll kill you, a kind of like focusing more on the drop it than the kill you part might be the way of getting these people on your team to really sell the idea of the notification, the sanctity of it. If that's going to be your only amendment to the idea, maybe that's like an itty bitty little extra thing he could have focused on rhetorically that might have benefited him. Just like a little note there.
On any edge case here. So on your end, you would be uncomfortable with a society where thieves are executed on the spot, which I can understand. But
I'm going to shoot you if you do X, does X, gets shot, isn't morality. I mean, you're being pretty bad faith here at City Lights. Like, what he's trying to say is that he thinks that you would be morally justified if you put that person on notice that you were going to use lethal intent should they continue what they were doing, which is stealing your stuff. So I do think that they're talking about morality insofar as they're talking about, like, what situation is somebody justified morally in doing this, in shooting somebody over theft. So I think you're being really, like, reductive or mean or stupid by saying that, but okay.
I would be more uncomfortable with a society where people can steal with impunity, knowing that they'll never be met with lethal force. I would be more okay.
I'm just curious what your personal take is on this discussion, whether you're on Steve or Joel's side. I mean, I'm on Steve's side, but I'm pretty sure if I talk to Joel, I might be like open to changing my mind. I really do think that if somebody's stealing your shit and you invested in a firearm, that's part of the benefit of investing in a firearm and in living in a God-loving country where that's a right that's, you know, available to you. I think if you have the means of protecting your property and you have the means of leveraging that against somebody who wants to threaten that, then yeah, I think if you notify them and you give them an out and they can reasonably disengage from that activity and they continue to follow through with it, yeah, I think you could shoot them. I really do. I think if you gave them warning, if they had the opportunity to like let that go and they didn't, then yeah. But I'm crazy. I would go so far as to like say maybe you don't even want to call the police after, but like let them go and tell them like, hey, we'll have no problems if you fucking walk out that door right now. But if you don't put that down, you're never walking out that door, you know? I think that there's a way that you could put that I don't know is more palatable to me, but may not be to other people. Because I recognize in other countries, you're not even okay with the idea of firearms, let alone threatening somebody's life with one, whether it's over property or anything else. It seems unacceptable to a lot of people. Whereas for me, I don't know. I've lived in this country, so my perception is tainted, but you know, that's my take on it.
With a society where some people get killed because they're put on notice and they decide to steal something anyway, versus a society where people just have to sit and watch as a thief breaks in, steals their shit, and wonder.
Like, I don't think you can exact justice, but I think you can stop somebody from like continuing in a crime like that. I don't know. Like, because if I were to teleport the whole situation outside of your home, I feel very different about it. So like I said, if I were to walk outside of the office right now and somebody is like breaking into my car or something, and I like come up on them with the gun and I'm like, whoa, knock it off, buddy, get the fuck out of there and buzz off. Otherwise, you're fucking not leaving this place alive, dude. Like, I think that like, I don't know if that's okay. I don't know if it's okay to go outside brandishing a firearm and pointing it around and stuff, but I'm also like acutely aware of how bullets are a very dangerous thing when they're not going where they're meant to go. We might watch it later. I like to often bring it up on the channel, but one of my favorite like gun safety guys talks about you know, why you need a backdrop as a police officer, why you need to make sure that if your bullet misses, it's going to stop before it hurts other people. And being aware of your backdrop is really important when you start to open fire. And when we watch the Breonna Taylor case later tonight, we'll also see that. But being aware of that bullet's going to keep going. And if you miss somebody, you know, all of a sudden when I'm outside, I have to weigh this much higher. If I'm in the office building and somebody breaks in right now and it's fucking the middle of the night and I know nobody's in the office, like that's different than if I'm outside and there's like houses all over the place and I'm like opening fire on a target that's moving away from me. If he starts driving away in the car, do I think I have the right to start shooting at him and hope that I can kill him and the car will veer off the side of the road and not hurt it? Like, no, I don't think you have the right at that point, but they never go into these kinds of circumstances. But that's where, at least for me, it breaks down. For me, it's very clear when you're inside of your house, but outside of your house, things get a lot more hazy. And that's why I'm open to like changing my opinion on it personally.
Wanders off with impunity.
I think my stray bullet argument would be my hesitation with Destiny's pickpocket scenario. Yeah, or Destiny's sandwich scenario. If we're in the middle of a sandwich shop and you go, hey, you take my sandwich, I'm going to fucking pull my gun out of my holster and I'm going to fucking mow you down. That puts so many people in that sandwich shop at risk. Like, we're talking about utilitarian arguments, but because this other person might be ignorant of like firearms and stuff, maybe they don't have, again, with the perspective theory, if they're not holding in the forefront of their mind the safety behind the firearm in the moment they're thinking about this hypothetical situation, they're never going to consider it, right? Even if it's something they're aware of, even if they watch the same stuff I did, even if they're trained in firearms, even if they know all that shit, I don't think unless they have it in the forefront of their mind that it's going to impact the decision they're making. But for me, it does. For me, the idea that I were to unload a firearm and that I killed somebody else in the process because I was irresponsible with it, or because I thought I could Batman it and stop somebody from like taking my car or something, that's unacceptable to me. And it's something that I wouldn't advocate other people to do. I think at that point, there's some point where you need to let go and it's got to be a police thing. And I think that's one of them. That's where I'm at with it. I don't know, just personally.
I would argue that
Like the donut scene in Boogie Nights. Yeah, dude.
there does, of course, need to be structures in place which prevent these things from happening in various ways, right? Including detaining the people responsible for the crime. But no, I don't think I'd rather live in a society wherein people are dying for that. Yeah, I don't agree that somebody's stealing a motorcycle and you're holding a gun and you just shoot him. To me, that seems like a way worse society.
Why?
I think we should try to
why do you think it
society-
seems like an okay society? So let's say we're not in RoboCop land yet, where the police are 100% showing up on time to every single thing, solve every crime, right?
Of course.
So you've got a guy that works and works and he earns like $9, $10 an hour. He saved up money for his nice fucking Harley. He's really happy with it. And then some guy shows up to his house to steal it. Why do you think that guy?
Supreme says, I think it's fair to create terms and allow them to make their own choice in that situation. But once they're in the car and driving away, I think you have to let them go. Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, like, I'm not sure how valuable it is for us to look at two extremes of an argument like this. Like, once we've already examined the two extremes, maybe we should start looking at the in-between situations like this one, because I feel like that's where we're going to find hidden rules in our brain that are judging how we're, like, rationalizing the situation. And they may not even be aware of what those situations are or what the edge cases are, but I'm not sure we find them at these extremes. I'm pretty sure we find them in the middle ground where, like, we're outside the home, we're outside of clear environments that we're used to thinking about, because I think things like gun safety can start to come into play, at least for me personally, in a way that would change how I respond to some of this stuff.
I should be forced to just sit there and watch the guy just make off with his shit.
Why should he be forced? Oh, I think he should be forced generally because the wager there, the utilitarian wager between the guy's life versus the Harley Davidson, which that is grand larceny. I guess I don't know how.
I don't care about
serious
grand larceny. I don't care anything. I'm just in terms of like,
I'm just saying
this
that
guy
You're slipping on your rhetoric, but that's okay.
traded
world,
hours of his life for this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you should probably just report that for sure rather than killing him. I don't think that that's a great idea.
I guess we just.
He's also really, the other guy, Big Joel, is also really uncomfortable with the idea that we're multiplying this out across like the whole of society. Like, hold on, if every single person that ever found a thief shot the thief, that sounds like such a scary fucking world for me. I don't want to live in that world. That sounds scary. That's like some Mad Max shit. But I don't know if Big Joel is like tempering that expectation or that worldview with like how few people have guns, how few people even catch somebody in the act, how few people are able to make the notification that we're talking about here, like warn them, how few of criminals in that world where that's a normal thing actually decide to take them up on that and call it as a bluff, right? Like, I just don't know if in the forefront of his mind he's keeping track of all these other like compounding principles here or compounding factors here.
I think it's a really bad idea that in your idea that you advocate that.
Like he's laughing because it's just a really uncomfortable thing. He's like, I don't know how the fuck you're advocating for a world where it could look like Mad Max and people are just shooting people all over the city over like theft and widespread burglary and whatever. But he is not tempering in his mind mind with how little burglary or theft or whatever there is, with how few of those cases people actually see the person in the act, how few of those cases then that people are armed, how few of those they're able to notify them. Like there are a lot of other filters here. And I feel like at the end of the day, taking into account also that thieves and other people in this society would be culturally aware that they would be shot and whatever, like where Steven's from, or like where other people in the chat have mentioned they're from, where that's just something they expect. If that's across the whole of the United States, and every state where guns are, openly accessible to people, they reasonably think that they might be killed stealing stuff, we're in a very different world. I just don't know if it's that uncomfortable. I think the longer you sit with that thought, maybe the more comfortable you'll become with it. And there may be other things that he's uncomfortable with, like firearm ownership, that's like clouding his ability to think about that.
Stronger people should just be able to infinitely steal from weaker people. But I think we just probably have to...
The word should is doing a lot of legwork there. I don't think they should be allowed to infinitely
No,
steal
you are
from
saying
No,
more...
he does, though.
You're saying you have a moral imperative to stand by and watch as a stronger person steals your shit. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. I think you have a moral imperative to not kill when your life is not in danger. Yes,
Okay.
that is what I think.
Sure. Well, we're not talking about not killing when your life is...
See, there we go. So the life is always going to be worth more. If your life isn't threatened, you should be obligated to let the other person go. You shouldn't take the life of another person if your life or the life of other people isn't threatened by their behavior or their actions, right? This is that fundamental belief that I said we're not really touching upon too much, but it's likely what's stopping any further progress in this, and that's why we're going to keep looping, because then Steven goes back to like, wait, this is exactly my problem with your argument, is that your argument requires that we tell weaker people that they should always let stronger people do as they will, and they should have faith and confidence in some external system to exact justice or to stop that from happening or to make that right. And they're just never going to resolve this.
Isn't it? We're talking about watching somebody steal your shit. We're talking about watching somebody steal things from you.
I'm saying in almost every case where your life is not in danger, you have a moral responsibility to not kill. That's what I would normally think. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's it. Do you have anything you want to say?
No, I can't think of anything else. Do you have anything else?
Wait. Oh, okay. I guess that sorry, I just will think for 10 seconds here.
No, you're good.
I really think Big Joel needs to sit with these ideas longer and maybe consider like the possibility of this alternate reality existing in which people are reasonably, afraid of firearms, and they understand that all the people that are armed are going to use it, and there's an expectation of that. Like, I think if he could live in a world like the one that Steven grew up in, he would be a lot more open to this idea or these hypotheticals. But because he probably comes from a very different world, I just don't think he can consider it as readily as some people in the chat or Steven that grew up in places where this is kind of the norm.
I guess to me, broadly, when I was listening to that,
what do you think about Destiny doing his dismal okay? Does it look good to you? I mean, it probably doesn't look good to an outside audience. I mean, it shows that he's kind of done with the conversation.
Keep
Thanks.
up the good work, dude.
Awesome. Thanks. I will. Thanks, Spare Ribs. Yeah, I mean, it might not look good to outside people that don't know him, but what it's indicating is exactly what I think he wants it to indicate, which is that he's done with the conversation, or he doesn't think we're going to get any farther on this topic. And usually when he does that meek kind of like, okay, or is there anything else you wanted to talk about? He'll usually follow it up with like, I just don't think we're going to get past X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. He gives his reasoning for why he's behaving that way afterwards most of the time. So it might not look good rhetorically, but I think generally he gives an explanation to it, and it is communicating what he means to.
A debate. You obviously don't remember it, but it seemed as though you held people's the sacredness of people's ownership of their property in such high regard that I have trouble understanding not why you think that.
I want thieves to have to consider the risk of being killed over possessions, but that doesn't mean that I want the death penalty for theft. Yeah, I get that. And it doesn't mean that you want everybody in their living room to be the judge, jury, and whatever, an executioner in a lot of cases of somebody. And I would like to think that in an ideal world where we have firearms play this huge of a role and everybody is aware of them, I gotta think that there's other. I know the advice is to unload the entire thing into somebody and shoot until they're neutralized and whatever. But I would like to think that there are other ways of handling these situations. And although we can't get into the nuance, like I would like to think there's other things you can do. But yeah.
People should pay their
Shoot until the threat stops. Yeah, that's the advice. Shoot him in the leg. Yeah, maybe not shoot him in the leg, but I don't know if you need to unload an entire clip into somebody necessarily, but we need a MAME option. I mean, in a world that happens and this guy is so upset that people are being killed by guns all the time, maybe he'll invent a less than lethal that's actually effective and reliable and inspires confidence in people.
their taxes if they're obligated to. But why do you think that we should have a society like that?
Birdshot, buckshot. I mean, I've heard a lot of success with using one of those shotgun shells with like rock salt in it. I hear that is a really good deterrent, and that really, really fucking hurts. And when you shoot people with fucking rock salt, that'll kind of put a damper in their day. But I don't know, dude. I don't really know.
Why do you think that? I don't understand it. If you think that people's property, their life essence that they're pouring into everything is of this much value, I don't totally understand why you think our society shouldn't be essentially libertarian.
So two things real quick, because a lot of people, and I'm not going to make accusations of backgrounds or whatever, because I don't know where everybody comes from, but I hear really...
He's really struggling not to say you're an affluent white male who doesn't fucking understand how the other side... He's trying very hard not to go like normal Destiny, where he freaks out and says that you're privileged and he must be some of the Twitter class and whatever. He's trying very hard to avoid that, and I appreciate it, but you can tell when he wants to go into it.
Really, sometimes people talk about property in very strange ways to me, and my familiarity with property is a lot different. So back before I was into streaming and I worked, if I bought something, like that thing represented, number one, incredibly real hours of my life that I traded away for it. Like that means something to me, okay? In terms of like, I have lost, weeks of my life saving up for, the first or the second generation iPod, or, I'd saved up for like a car stereo. So not only are these things that I trade hours of my life for, these things represent like measurable improvements in my life. The ability to listen.
I'm not trying to contest that here.
Sure, I know. I'm trying to be more, because I'm trying to be more rhetorical in 2021. And usually, I know that,
Okay.
Because people like you will load things. You'll be like, oh, it's just property, and I'll let you get away with it. So sure, but I want to push back on that.
I like that he has counter narratives that he's using now.
It's not just.
So here what he's trying to say is like, no, I want to not let you get away with kind of writing off something as just like a variable in a logical equation that we're talking about. If you get to write that off, I should equally have the opportunity to challenge that write-off and to try and like create emotional weight or anecdotal weight to some of these points, so that they're not able to be warped in these kinds of weird ways, or so that they're not turned inside out and abstracted so far from the kind of oomph that I mean for them to have. That's good, yes. And using anecdote Andy stuff and using stories and trying to incorporate emotional appeals into why you believe that these variables are so important is good, and you should do it. All of you should do that. If you're writing a paper and you have your 3-part thesis, don't only think about what quotes am I going to use and how am I going to incorporate those. If you really want to spice up your writing, choose a quote that you can also give some emotional testimony to, or some personal story about, like having some kind of quip or having some kind of multifaceted argument for why you believe something is really impactful. And, different people need to hear different things at the same time or in order to accept ideas. Remember perspective theory. We need the right bullet points and relations between them to be drawn all in one frame of somebody's perception. And that can be difficult. Sometimes having 3 points just isn't quite enough. Sometimes you need a 4th emotional point for the whole thing to finally click for somebody. Different folks need different kinds of arguments. So try to bring something together that has a lot of flavor to it, that has a lot of things that somebody could grasp onto and say, that's a solid point. I had never thought about it like that. Yeah, if I think about it like X, Y, and Z, and we have A right here, I could believe it, right? That's what we're trying to do when we're trying to convince people.
property, okay? These are things that have a massive, not even a material, but an immaterial improvement in your life on a daily basis that you had to trade hours of your life to get. It's not just like a fucking vase or something that stands in the living room that you look at when you come home. It might be something that measurably improves your emotional well-being every single day of your life, and you had to give up parts of your life to get it. So when I'm talking about property, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Okay?
And when he talks about giving up parts of your life, I feel like this is a very important dimension to this argument that I feel like you should use more in the future. Is you're trading, when you're a wage slave, you're trading life away for dollars in a ratio that's kind of unacceptable to a lot of people, leftists included, right? And so when you're talking about personal possessions and theft and stuff like that, when you're at that low of the bar on the like socioeconomic ladder, we can very easily abstract that dollar amount into man hours, into life that was had to have, been spent. That after all of the bills and expenses of life, this person only had so much left, and that so much is equal to however many hours they had to work to cover the basics and everything else before they could even afford that extra. And if we count all of those hours, and that's how we're doing the calculus here, it gets really difficult to defend the position that Big Joel is putting forward. It gets really difficult when confronted with the sheer magnitude of human hours of life that was dedicated into some of these objects, to simply write them off as property and to say that, every single life is going to be worth more than this, basically, and that until we have somebody rampaging and fucking stealing a bunch of shit, we're still not justified to like defend it or to get it back, and we have to rely on institutions that we are well aware are imperfect and are not suited to actually making these situations right. When you don't have that recourse, and when you're confronted with the magnitude of the value of some of these possessions, I struggle to believe Big Joel here. I struggle to adopt his version of the world because I feel like it's just idealistic and it misses what it feels like to be confronted with that. To look in your car and see the holes in it, like Steven talks about later, and to not only think about the malice of somebody that came in and took those things from you, but to also be confronted with the reality of how much time they just stole from you, right? How much joy they may have taken from you in the future that you would have had from those things, and how disappointed they have made not only present you, but past you that put in all those hours trying to achieve that thing. And to think that all of these could be threatened at once and you could have every means of stopping somebody taking that from you, and you're meant to err on the side of caution and allow them to escape with their life. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that, and I think that's powerful. I think you should go for that a lot more.
Okay, that's what I mean when I say property, okay? I don't like viewing this as something that is wholly separate from a person that exists in like another dimension. Like you have to open up a portal to go murder someone somewhere else that's stealing something that you own and like a timeshare in Miami, okay? I just want to get that out of the way, number one. Number two, so you ask me like, how are you okay with taxation at all? I believe that humans can create, if we talk about utilities or utils, humans that work together can create more utility than humans that are separated.
And here he's going back on his social contract thing and kind of explaining that for a second time.
Even if there are the same number of people. So if you've got 100 people that are separated, they might generate 1 unit of utility each. If you have 100 people working together, they might generate 50 units of utility each. So it seems to be the case that people working together are capable of achieving more happiness, even on an individual level, for every single person involved than people living apart. If that's true, which I believe that is true, then that ropes me into forming contracts and bonds with other people that they're forced to work with me in that.
Now, like, if you really wanted to be five-head and approach Steven with like an actual argument that he's going to process, you need to fit into this framework. So if you were to come up with something, and this is just off the top of my head, so it might not be good. If you were to approach him and you were to say, okay, well, in this calculus where people are working together to create more stuff, and that, the more people you have working together, the more stuff you'll create. I think also, if we're measuring people in their lives based on like how much they're able to contribute to everything, I think that more often than not, the argument could be made that ending the life of a thief over the long term of like whatever takes out so much productivity out of the society that it might not be worth the stuff that was actually being threatened by theft. But I don't know. We imprison people, so we take them out of the economy. They're kind of a giant lag on it. I don't know if that's the case or if you argue that out, if it'll work. But it has to be something like that, maybe. Trying to just fit your belief about something into his variables is the way that you have to do it here. And I don't know if Big Joel does that much at all.
Manner, which means that we have to pay taxes and we have to do things for every other person in society with the mutual understanding that all of us are working on building something together that improves all of our lives in ways that we couldn't if we were separated. That's where like my idea for taxation and stuff comes from.
Okay, so I was never trying. So my question then is, do you not feel that way about the hours you put into your work when the government takes it? What's the difference in feeling? I guess I'm asking you.
Yeah, I mean, you have the feeling when you work as a wage slave, the feeling is like Monday and Tuesday belong to the government, right? Like you pay taxes. But like the thing is that like the reason why taxes suck, or why a libertarian, I guess, might feel like taxes.
And again, we jump back onto this, but he already said that he thinks that that's morally justified. And all Big Joel's going to get here is another version of the same answer, yet another explanation for why that's not, you can't relate that to this situation here. Big Joel trying this again, I'm not sure if he really understood the argument the first time about why these two situations are disanalogous, but here he's going to get another angle for why that is. And I wonder if Big Joel, in his thinking about this, found himself constantly convinced of his own argument when he brought it to this place. And maybe that's why he keeps bringing Steven here, is because he's expecting that Steven will have some revelation when confronted with this angle. But he's already tried that once now, and it hasn't worked out. So interesting to try it again.
Are theft is because you only see one part of that exchange. I work and then the government steals my fucking money. But what people don't see is
you said Big Joel is just so convinced that Destiny is an ANCAP because he's being reductive. Oh, that kind of explains it a little bit. If he thinks he's an ANCAP and he's just trying to lure him into agreeing with ANCAP positions, maybe.
the only reason why you were able to earn that money in the first place is because of taxes that had already been paid. So whether we're talking about basic shit and obvious shit like roads and schools, or whether we're talking about more abstract stuff like a military to defend your country or larger bodies that organize trade between you and other countries, right? Like the only reason you're enabled to even earn any money in the first place is because of what your tax dollars have already gone towards paying for. So that's why I'm in favor of things like taxation. Like it's not just you getting robbed by the government, you're paying the government for a service that it provides you, but it's really easy to see the tax dollars you lose, and it's really hard to see the benefit the government provides.
So I guess this is just going to become circular because I'm just going to say I'm not interested in what the government is doing for me. No, thank you. And then they're going to be, and then you're going to be like, well, you're roped into it. It's better for everybody, etc. It's going to go back and forth like that.
But I don't want to brush my teeth, and I just want to eat cookies all day. Yeah, you could try that, bro. You could try that. I've been listening to so much Pecora that like I like my laugh. I've like it's shaped into her laugh, and it makes me uncomfortable. Thank you, Hadori.
Wait, there was something on my mind. Shit. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah.
God, it was one last thing. You were talking about this really important relationship between people, especially people of lower means, people who can't afford as many things, and the stuff that they buy because it's of tremendously more importance. So I guess I'd want to ask you, is there any sort of moral weight that you put differently when a thief steals a Harley Davidson from a billionaire?
And here I'm personally going to go back to ratios. Remember that I talked about before that the ratio of like of the hours of human capital that you've put into something versus what you get out of it. When you look at a poor person, you include cost of living into that equation. The cost of even the most like trivial luxuries is incredible. Even for their phone, even if they're paying monthly, even if they're paying on a lease, if we include in this equation like all of the hours they had to put in affording rent and everything else that they need into that, because you needed all of that before you were going to get the luxury thing, it becomes very clear the true cost of that. And if you compare it to somebody like Steven, not to use like a big Bill Gates argument or something, just Steven gets on and he does XYZ number of hours streaming and it gets XYZ amount of money, which is in one day probably already over like what he needs for himself, right? So like, when somebody is stealing a motorcycle from Steven, let's say it's like a $10,000 bike, something really, really nice or whatever. If they steal that $10,000 bike, for Steven, what does that mean in terms of man hours for Steven? Well, the ratio is very different than if that were for somebody who they were putting like $5 at the end of every shift into a jar, or they had like an app on their phone that was putting like the change from everything into something, like for somebody whose ratio of like hours of like labor they need to spend versus what they're getting out of it in terms of like excess, like I think that's important to keep in mind here. And I really think that like Big Joel should be able to easily think about this, and it might be because they're in the heat of the moment in the conversation, but this seems really simple to think about.
Or is that the same thing?
I think I would have to construct the same rule for everybody. On a personal level, I feel a lot different. If I would have found the guy that had tried to that had stolen my saxophone when I was going to college, I would have fought for that for my life and probably died because I was a small person. But there's no way I could ever imagine watching somebody walk away with my fucking instrument that I know.
At Kokutenko, it wouldn't matter, right? So the context that you're asking for wouldn't matter, because it would be,
Yes,
you wouldn't know in the moment,
mysterious
right?
reasons, I love this.
Like, if I catch you breaking into my house and stealing my shit and I point my gun at you and I give you that warning, there's no way for me to figure out, aside from sitting you down on the couch and asking you 20 questions, to figure out why you're stealing from me, what it's for, to get all those moral considerations. So there's no point in including those. It's like useless pedantry that doesn't really apply to any real life scenarios. So to go into those hypotheticals might not bear any fruit, because as the shooter in that situation, or as the person who is being stolen from, it's not reasonable that you would know why somebody is stealing your shit. So I'm not sure it's like super important to talk about it.
Know that I can't afford to replace. I would die.
Thank you,
defending it,
Siberia.
1,000,000%. But these days, if I came home and there was a burglar in my apartment, I would just walk the fuck out. I'd go to Chipotle and I'd wait 2 hours for them to fucking leave, because I can replace all my shit now. So from a personal perspective, I acknowledge that there's a difference. When you're wealthy, your property doesn't really mean as much because I can fucking buy all that shit over again. When you're poor, your property means so much fucking more to you because
And to be clear here, the man hours he has to put in, I feel like should be the focus here. That to replace everything in my house only requires that I work so much more, and I already have excess. I have money, I have labor hours stored in the bank, right? To take things away from money and to bring it back to like labor hours might be easier for socialist people to get, because socialist people like to think in terms of like, what is my labor worth if I act like a dumb fuck and I pretend that there's no cost to running a business. So, lefty people really like to think in terms of like, raw money dollars versus my hours, right? And they like to think in those terms. So I think instead of talking about the dollars, if you talk about the hours, if you talk about man hours, labor hours, time spent on something that's not leisure, that's when I think that you can kind of give them a more digestible angle for selling them on like how valuable this stuff is.
it represents so much more to you. Now, from like a moral perspective, I'm uncomfortable with the idea that you can steal from somebody that won't notice that it's gone. Because if we go back and we look at it from that rural utilitarian perspective, now instead of saying that like, as long as you're big enough, you can steal from somebody small enough, now we're basically saying like, it's okay to steal from somebody once they've passed a certain threshold of wealth, which also probably isn't okay. I don't think that would be acceptable either. I'd be more okay sitting on the other end of that, where people are killed for entering areas where I know that I'm going to get killed if I do this, but I'm not fucking doing it anyway. I'm okay with that person being killed trying to steal something, rather than crafting the rule for society that says, well, if somebody's wealthy enough, you can go and steal their shit.
All right. I guess, okay. I'm sorry, this isn't much of a debate. I'm just asking you questions at this point. So if somebody has like a no trespassing sign on their property, does that count or not?
Yeah, I think that puts you on sufficient notice. If it says no
that
trespassing.
That counts? But there's an implicit no trespassing sign on every person's house.
Also, Kokutenko, you seem like a very kind soul. I don't think you're considering that not everybody steals for like sustenance or for like, yeah, like, and some people live at a level of at a level in their life that demands that they have that, like they have addictions or other things that are costly and they need to afford them by doing these things. But a lot of thieves, once they get good at it, don't do it just to sustain themselves. They do it for excess. They do it for extra stuff. I don't know if you're getting very far with me with this idea that all of the thieves are stealing because they're taking bread out of your cupboard because they need to feed their family. I don't know if that's like if that's a very representative hypothetical.
Well, I mean, I guess you could argue maybe it needs to be like a no trespassing or I'll shoot or whatever.
Or like, I don't think a sign should suffice. Period. To be honest with you.
Are you? This isn't an insult. Are you American or?
I am. Yeah.
Wait, where?
And again, yes, be careful because normally he gets really heated when he asks questions like this. And if they're not American, he goes, you just don't understand. Or when somebody says that they're 23 years old, he says that you're just too young and naive, right? These kinds of things I think he needs to pay attention to. Yesterday, we kind of had a bit of talk about how when you ask if somebody is a fan of something or if somebody voted for something, these are things which people often get upset, will invalidate their argument, right, in the eyes of a lot of people. And these are kind of like those sorts of questions that may suss out these invalidating questions or these invalidating characteristics. So it might be something to be careful of. I personally do this a lot, and so I'm kind of torn on like whether or not I should continue to do it in my personal and professional life or whether or not I should drop the habit. Just being honest there.
Where in general are you from?
I'm from the Northeast.
Okay. So I lived in Omaha, Nebraska, I guess. Maybe this is just something I grew up with. I would assume that if I'm breaking into somebody's house, that they're going to fucking kill me if they catch me. That, even without a sign, I would just assume that. But that might be like a difference in area that people grow up in. But I would always assume that my friends would even joke.
And again, like we said before, and this is why I made a big deal about it the first time we saw it come up, this assumption that he makes is pivotal, in my opinion, to how he's reasoning to these outcomes, how he's rationalizing things. If we're talking in terms of my perspective theory, this is a point that's going to keep coming up when he's trying to rationalize like this part of the world, when he's trying to figure it out. This will constantly pop into the forefront of his brain, this assumption that people know what they're getting into when they're fucking breaking into something. People know they're going to get shot. Even some of the people in the chat were saying, yeah, I think that's a reasonable expectation. But other people in the chat, particularly European folks, they don't think that, right? You know? And it's important to realize that that's not a fair assumption to make, that very clearly just from covering it, we see that there are a lot of chatters that, you know, agree that that's reasonable and there are chatters that don't, right? It's not a fair assumption to make because it clearly doesn't represent everybody. And like I said, I know a lot of thieves, and the thieves that I know were not convinced at any point in time that they were going to be killed. It was only in the diciest of situations that they would think they were going to get killed. A lot of the time, they just think they're going to get away with it or be able to weasel out of it. 101 other things they're thinking about, but not all the time is that they're going to get murdered in the process of killed in the process of doing the thing.
Joke about it. Even when I was fucking 10, because me and a friend would run around the neighborhood hopping fences and shit, and our...
Yeah, and he's talking about the extreme that you're mentioning, Stale, hopping over fences out in the wild and getting shot, like out in the middle of a field or in some wooded area. Like, yeah, that is the extreme. That is the extreme of being worried, about being paranoid, about being killed for trespassing or for being somewhere you ought not to be. And I just don't think that applies to everybody. I think there's a lot of people, even in the rural parts of California, there are places where, yes, if you hop over that fence, I would be concerned about getting shot. And there are other places, like a lot of places in Riverside, for instance, to name personal examples, where I'm not afraid of getting shot when I jump over a fence. No, like even if it says no trespassing, like I assume that maybe somebody will yell at me. Or if I go anywhere in Southern California and I go trespass onto some property to like go mudding or something, which is a common thing to do, like I don't think those people are expecting to be sniped by somebody who yells out from the fucking tree line, "If you do not leave, I will fire upon you. If you do not put down that fence marker, I will fire upon you." They're like, they don't think that shit's gonna happen, dude. They don't. And that's just like, You know, something that you should confront. I don't know if it's a good assumption.
Scary thing would be like, fuck, like we get caught, we're gonna get fucking killed or whatever. Like unironically, like I would think that around certain people. So I mean, I guess maybe in other areas you can make the argument that like a sign or whatever isn't sufficient to put a person on notice that they might be sacrificed in their life for entering an area. You can make that argument, in which case, yeah, sure, maybe more notice would need to be given, sure, but.
So do you think the law should be changed to reflect this? Like, you think it's actually like fucked up, the current laws in America?
Yeah, I actually think castle doctor stuff should be way more. Well, from a moral side, I think so. From a pragmatic side, it gets a lot weirder because when we start looking at like how things play out in real life, when people die, one of the worst things legally is that you lose half of the witness to that. So for instance, you might get situations where, do you remember that guy in, I want to say it was in Texas, that like camped out in his fucking basement waiting for the two kids to break into his house? And he like, and he like executed.
So again, we talked about this earlier, not what happened. To give a quick refresher, this case is Catco v. Briney, 1971. What ended up happening was this elderly couple had a house that they inherited or whatever. It was vacant. People kept breaking in. People were stealing things. They put up signs. They did their best to ward people off, and it wasn't working. So what they did was they booby-trapped a room. They set a string to a shotgun to where if you would open the door, it would blast you. Granted, the blast was meant to be lower than your abdomen and stuff, so it maybe wouldn't be like a fatal blow. It would scare off intruders. And what happened was two thieves went, they broke into the house, they pulled the chair out from underneath the door handle there. They noticed the door handle was difficult to pull, still pulled on it anyways to steal stuff out of the house, and they were shot. And they were later found guilty for grand larceny. They broke into the house and they tried to do all that shit, whatever. Grand larceny, I don't know if it's grand larceny, it's something. They got in trouble for the stealing. And they eventually went back to sue the people because they thought it was unfair that they set up the booby trap there. What if the house was on fire and a fire crew went in there and they got shot? What if some kids in the area, like Steven when he was younger, broke into the house, even if they know that they might get hurt, and they got blasted because you booby-trapped a room of an abandoned house, right? Like, without, so, like, that's the problem. And no amount of signage or stuff like that is really going to make people feel okay with that because it's an indiscriminate trap set up for somebody. And that's the case.
So like, somebody who had a trap that was waiting for them.
What was the ruling? They were in trouble for the stealing part of it, and the owners were in trouble for the booby trap part of it. They had to pay for the medical care for the guy that was shot, and they had to pay a bunch of restitution or whatever. So, legally, those people were in trouble for breaking in and trying to steal shit. But at the same time, I think civilly, the homeowners were in trouble for setting up the booby trap and hurting that guy.
Where they walked into the door and acid broke on their heads.
I don't know about that. But I remember.
No, that happened.
Okay, I remember as part of that case. I'm pretty sure he shot one of them dead, like on the ground when they were already like completely out of. Yeah. So like in cases like that, like so if my rules led
Legal
to an uptick and that type of thing.
Legal did a video on that case. A lot of people do videos on that case. In America, that's something that at least I had to look at in English class. I was in all honors English, so it may have been an honors only thing, but I vividly remember having to cover this exact case and having to write about it.
Thing where people were being like executed on property, and we
do that for euthanasia and abortion and other stuff too. Like we would have to like write essays about random shit. This is just like one of the random things you would have to write papers about.
We started to lose the ability to decipher, like, wait, hold on, like, was this person actually like breaking some shit, or did this guy just like wander into your yard on accident, right? If that started to happen, then on a pragmatic level, I would have to reconsider to where I'd be like, okay, well, hold on, like, I don't know, like that maybe this is something that needs to be looked at. So the legal level.
And I like that he keeps trying to give those outs. Like, well, at this extreme, maybe I would have to reconsider things just to like give this guy a little bit of ammo.
Can't always meet the moral level because.
And I don't like that Steven pretends like doing these sorts of things, giving people arguments or talking about where your argument breaks down is super negative for him. I think it's an act of really good faith, and I feel like it keeps the tone of the conversation really positive. And if he were to like not skip over it nearly as much and give a bit more emphasis on those parts where he's clearly giving concession or clearly like steel manning the other side, and he didn't skip over it in his very quick Steven-y way, I think he could start to like change the way that people think that these debates go. If he were to just give more emphasis on the parts where he's being fair, I think he could change his like his social standing or whatever, like the image people have in their mind of him, from being somebody who's an asshole and very dickish to somebody who is tough but fair. I think he can at least change it to tough but fair. I think that is like a brand that he could still do, and it would be by doing things like this and being more emphatic when you're doing it. Like, just try to highlight that you are giving concession here, you are trying to steal man, or you are trying to break your own argument. And I think people could see you as more fair if you just draw their attention to that. He does that a lot in this conversation. I just think a little bit more emphasis there and you're good to go. I think you could start changing that.
Because it...
But would it be entertaining? He could still do all the mean shit. Like, I'm not saying get rid of the mean shit at this point. I have compromised in my view and my advice of what he should do. Like, still do the mean stuff for sure, because that's entertaining. But there are lots of lulls. These are always lulls. There's always lulls in the conversation. Use those lulls and fill that space with steel manning. Talk about points where your argument breaks down. Talk about hypotheticals where I could see it from your perspective. Talk about how, like, when you said blah, 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 I can totally agree with that, because like when I'm thinking about this and I think about I think more of that in emphasizing that could start to change people's opinion of the conversations, right? And in his retrospective, in his talks after, he can again emphasize those, go back to them, be like, I thought it was really fair to have offered him that if the world was like this, then I could totally grant it, and I think that I could definitely give him more ground here if it was proven that this is like this, I thought it was pretty reasonable. Like, I'm trying to be more fair this year. In 2021, Steven's just like not taking shit from people, but at the same time, he's not pumping people's, booties full of smoke. Like, if I think that there might be a problem with my argument, I'm just going to be real about it, because not everybody is challenging me in a way that I think that they ought to, right? Nobody is, giving me enough challenge on my points, so I'll make up my own arguments to my points. I'll just try to like help you out while you're in the conversation. I'm done being like super combative to the point of like the conversation goes nowhere, right? There needs to be some give and take, and I'm willing to have more give, I think that could be helpful for him.
Because
I think Destiny Offstream is a really chill dude. Yeah, me too. He's a bit of a dickhead, but he's a dickhead in streaming too. I think he's really kind. I think he's thinking about ways that he can benefit people when he likes them. And I think that a lot of like the actions that he takes are really sweet in that regard. Like, he does things in real life that are noticeably sweet. Like, oh, you're thinking about people and you're trying to like do cool stuff. Like, he's got a lot of that to him, but he also is super duper combative and, whatever. So it's a balance. He's a cool guy IRL. And it comes off when he can be more like flexible with people like he is here.
Can't, right? Like, like for instance, like you have to be 18 years old to sign a contract. Is that an appropriate age? There are probably some 16-year-olds that can sign contracts that have worked for 2 years or whatever. And there are probably a lot of 22-year-olds that are just graduating from college that are too dumb to sign contracts. They don't know what they're doing, right? But so we kind of approximate like hopefully the law tracks morality, but we don't know 100%. So that might be something that I would have to change legally speaking, depending on how it played out,
I have a response.
And there you go. See, like, there may be problems in my system and I may have to remedy them with some like legal things, but any decision that we take here is probably going to produce like anomalous situations or unwanted situations that we're going to have to continue to correct through legal means, right? It's just, I think it's a lot easier to correct those few problems in my system than it is to correct the whole of theft in your system. I think your system requires a RoboCop-esque reality in which the police are able to respond to everything and in which people are aware of like, in which people are so faithful in the institutions that they don't need to defend their own shit, right? But I just think that's more fantastical and divorced from reality, and I think mine, matches better with the life that people are living.
To that, but one thing I forgot, it wasn't a jar of acid, it was that he set up a trap shotgun so that when the guy opened the house, he was shot in the face. Which was not decided as legal, which I don't think no way you'd think that should be, whatever.
No, the guy's actually setting traps and shit. That gets like really weird.
Well, wait, why would you think that?
See, like, and I see you in chat. I never got why Destiny was not fine with people getting shot who enter houses that are booby trapped to hell and kill anyone who enters to steal, because you're, like, we'll talk about this here. He'll go into it.
Should be illegal. I'm confused actually. Like because he definitely had a no trespassing sign.
The problem that I had there was that so when I said before about infinitely stronger or strong people stealing from weaker people in infinite manners, I think that I have to think this more. I think you probably have an obligation to stop somebody if you have the means to otherwise without endangering yourself. And my understanding of that case was that it was like an old adult male that was against like some teenage kids.
And here's another thing. He's not ever going to say this, but here's what I would say. Why I don't. Because now I'm remembering. I don't know if he has quite an adequate answer in my opinion to this, but here's my response. The reason why I'm not okay with the booby-trapped house is because you didn't stop anybody from stealing with that booby trap. That booby trap was not a catch-all. That booby trap did not snap a fucking cage around the booby trappers and then call up the police and tell them that people are trapped inside of the house. The booby trap wasn't intended to actually, it didn't even accomplish that. It didn't stop people from stealing. They still stole. Like, they still did it. I don't understand. And nobody's life was put at risk. You just set something up to fuck with people that were breaking into something. Like, I really don't feel like it's analogous to you actually being a moral actor in something and making a decision in the moment with a gun, with somebody breaking into your house, which is what most of us are imagining and probably where most of us could lean towards Destiny's side of things. Like, you know, I just don't know if that's analogous to setting up a booby trap in a house for anybody or anything that happens to stumble upon it and trigger it, right? I don't know if that's the same at all.
Right.
In which case, he probably would have had the ability to stop these people without having to
make more lethal booby traps, or make booby traps that do what they're meant to do. Like, that booby trap was just meant to fuck people up. That wasn't meant to stop people from stealing. It wasn't meant to catch them. It wasn't meant to, you know, I don't know, bro.
like set up traps and execute them.
I
However,
mean, he wasn't even in the house. He was not there, right? He went to another place, so he didn't have any ability to stop them without the shotgun.
wait, I was
right?
under the impression we might be thinking of two different things. I was under the impression that he was there, that he was waiting in the basement the whole time, that he was like literally waiting for them to break in, and then when they did, yeah.
No, there's this great legal about this. I would recommend it. I think he left the house and waited for the guy to open it up, and he got shot in the face. But you can't think it changes the.
He didn't get shot in the face. Okay, see, like, neither of them remember it very well, and they both kind of get details really wrong. The guy was shot in the leg, which is an important detail, and I'm not being pedantic because that ended up coming up in the case. I'm not sure if Legal mentions this, but I remember from writing the paper on it that he specifically made sure that the shotgun would be at a level such that it would get them in the leg or something, right? He was going for the shoot them in the leg meme, right? He didn't shoot them in the face. It wasn't like that.
The morality. He's in the basement.
And because that would be a big difference if he set it up at like chest level and he wanted to really kill somebody and he put lethal rounds in there. That's very, very different.
Versus a country home, right? There's no.
No, it would totally depend on the.
Wasn't Steven thinking of the case where the old guy executed those teenagers? He talked about that before, but that's a very different case. I don't imagine that he thinks they're the same case. I think they're talking about two different cases, and this is the second one. He mentioned that one at first.
It would depend on like who's doing the breaking in and like who's defending or whatever. But if I'm being like ultra charitable, if we construct the argument in the right way, there are ways where I could agree with that. Sure. If there's a guy waiting in his house and two people are breaking in knowing that somebody's going to defend it with lethal force and they decide to break in anyway, like I view that as I'm really big on like consent and informed consent. Like I view that as a form of consent. If somebody puts you on notice, I'm going to fucking kill you if you break into my fucking house, and you're in a friend like, yeah, fuck it, let's break in anyway. Then I mean like you're on notice. Like I don't know what you expect to happen. I don't know why you would expect that these people should be defended. That's insane to me.
And notice can be as basic as like a no trespassing, or else I'll shoot. I have a gun.
So I mean, that would depend on how reasonable it is for the other person to understand that their life is in danger. Like if
if you break into Area 51 and you pass 3 of these fucking "we will shoot you" signs and you fucking drove out in the desert with the sole intent of trespassing onto the property, and then you were domed at like 100 yards by some fucking military sniper, I'm probably not going to feel as bad for you. But if you're in Hickville, USA, and you pass the same number of trespassing signs and you were out in the middle of the woods and you got domed, I would probably feel more sympathetic for you. Right?
Like if you live in like a nice suburb and you go to visit a friend and you like just enter the door and you go inside and you don't ask for permission because you think it's okay, I don't think that somebody should be able to kill you for that, because the person doesn't have a reasonable expectation that their life is like in danger. But if you know that you're breaking into somebody's private property and you know that you're not supposed.
Mr. Democracy, I think that's pedantic. That's why I'm not going that direction. I will assume that they will have read the signs for the sake of the hypothetical. I think to say well, maybe they didn't read the sign, I don't think is like a helpful direction to go in.
Supposed to be, then I would, in most, at least in my understanding of the United States, in most cities, I would expect you would know that like you're
Like maybe they broke into my house with Bose headphones on, bro, and they didn't hear me saying, "Hey, stop! I'm gonna shoot you if you keep rubbing me." Like, you know, we could go into like silly hypotheticals where you didn't get the notification, but I don't know how helpful it is to like move forward in a conversation or understanding of the topic.
life is under threat.
What's the topic? Go on YouTube and rewind.
There, like you know that what you're doing, that you know that this is like the deal that you're making essentially. That if you get caught, you might get killed.
Notify me.
This is kind of an non sequitur, I guess. What do you think should happen with guns in America? They should be more or less.
Honest to God, this is a really unpopular take. I don't really care that much about guns in America. I don't think they're that big of a deal. The amount of people that died of gun violence isn't really that much. The school shooting and the mass shooting stuff is pretty horrific. And I think the idea that schools, period, have to deal with any type of school shooting is like really fucked up.
How does this relate? He's just trying to get an overall impression about what Steven thinks about guns. In much the same way that Steven asking about his background and where he's from and whatever is trying to get at like larger level details that may be affecting his decision making here. This is likewise for him. If Steven is a gun nut who's like totally into everybody in the US should have a gun, well, all of a sudden it starts to make more sense that he has this opinion here because it's a part of a collective crazier net of like beliefs about guns, right? And this is why I like perspective theory, because we're looking for points that are larger level points, larger level beliefs, or larger level like institutions he's bought into that are like necessarily causing this result at this specific intersection of ideas, right? Oh, well, if I'm looking here, it'd be a lot like if we were looking at something on the edge of like the galaxy and we see that it's moving and it's spinning around in a circle and we're like, that's weird that this thing at the edge of the galaxy is spinning around in a circle. Well, we want to zoom out. We want to ask about questions that are kind of perpendicular to that motion because maybe there's something massive at the center that's kind of pulling the thing along and that's why it's dragging, right? So we're just trying to get more kind of context for what are the larger level ideas and beliefs this person has upon which other things are orbiting, right? Because we may just be at the edge of this galaxy and the reason that we're spinning around, we have this weird kind of change in acceleration or whatever is because there's something massive pulling on it, is because there's a bigger idea that's simply exerting its influence on this smaller little decision right here, right? So that's why he's asking questions like that. The same reason why Steven is asking questions about this person's background, because those are more influential forces that may be explaining why somebody has an opinion that they have.
I think that if we were going to do anything related to guns, I think that everything needs to focus on getting rid of guns off the like actual out of people's hands before making legislation to ban them. So like I know there's been some success in Australia and I think in some place in America doing like gun buybacks or whatever, but most of the gun legislation
is the center Destiny's ego. Yeah, that's the super massive black hole at the center of everything. Everything is being warped and distorted by Destiny's ego at the center of the galaxy. Eventually it will consume all of his points and all of his beliefs and there will be nothing left but his ego.
Legislation of the United
Maybe,
States
dude,
is just
maybe.
really poorly
It's an interesting theory, Lonely Danimo.
targeted. Like most people obsess over rifles, which mean nothing, and all the weird like restrictions that we put on shit don't really mean much. Like honestly, the most important thing to combat guns is probably getting rid of the war on drugs. But yeah.
So
yeah, it warps light. And once you cross into the ergosphere, once you try to engage with the ego and do anything with it, that's your point of no return. There is no escaping it. You've entered into its influence and it has consumed you. You're already dead and you just don't know it yet. You're essentially doomed to spaghettification.
So, but you would say clearly from all this that you think it's somebody's right by virtue of their right to defend their property to wield a gun and thereby wield lethal force, or no?
Yeah, I would say so. I think so, yeah. Assuming that like guns are legal and you're not like violating any crazy state laws or whatever. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, see, I come at it from like a very, like, I think that if we're making, like, if we're adding amendments to our social contract, I definitely think that giving everybody a tool to immediately escalate situations to lethal levels, it doesn't lead to the best outcomes for everybody. Not at all.
That's where I totally disagree. Because like if I'm crafting that contract with other people, I'm 100% fine with it. I would never imagine stealing shit from somebody else. I would never imagine that somebody would be okay with me breaking into their house and me taking possessions from them and then me being able to get away because they can't catch me in time or because I'm larger than the person I'm stealing from. I would never. So I personally, I would have no problem with agreeing with that. If I had 10 neighbors and we were all talking to each other, we're like, yeah, if any of us catch each other like breaking into each other's fucking houses, like we're gonna get blown the fuck away, right? It's like, yeah, of course, obviously.
It's not that I'm asking you, like, Destiny, if you would have a problem with that rule. But more broadly, I just think it's important to remember that people aren't just, like, stealing as a result of, like, you know, interior evil, right? And what's more, you know, I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to distribute guns to everybody such that they can, you know, extrajudicially.
There we are. The remnants of what was meant to be the argument here. So if Stephen would have answered the question earlier about guns and said that he wanted guns in the home of every American and it ended up being he was a gun nut, that was the argument that this guy was going to use. But unfortunately, he can't because that's not the bait that Stephen took. So like when Milo talked to Jangles and we saw that Milo had prepped for a certain conversation, Jangles was not providing it to him. We kept seeing like arguments that were kind of disjointed and didn't make sense in the context of the conversation because he had prepped for something else. That's kind of what we're seeing here. These seem like arguments that would have worked better if Stephen would have said that he was a gun nut and he wanted everybody to be armed and stuff, but I don't think that happened.
Destiny, if you would have a problem with that rule. But more broadly, I just think it's important to remember that people aren't just like stealing as a result of like, you know, interior evil, right? And what's more, you know, I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to...
Who are you, Blentleys? Are you saying anything productive or are you just being rude? You're distracting me at this point, so I'm gonna go ahead and scroll up through the chat log here. No, you're just being a dumb fuck. Okay. Do I have any swords in the chat? Can you just ban Blentleys or time him out for maybe like a day? No, just time him out for a day. He needs to chill the fuck out. I don't know. He's gotta shut the fuck up, dude. Goodness gracious. What is he talking about? Does anybody understand what he's saying? I would assume so, buddy. Why did you buy a ticket to a show that you don't understand? You should go watch something simpler, dude. You should go watch a booby streamer or something, bro. That's more your speed, dude.
Distribute guns to everybody such that they can, you know, extrajudicially kill people for entering their property.
I mean, people are extrajudiciously entering property. I mean, like, and whether somebody's stealing because they're evil or not. I mean, personally, I'm a hardline determinist, so I don't believe in like people being evil, whatever. But like, it doesn't really matter why somebody's stealing from you. Now, the only exception I'd make here.
Assuming booby streamer watchers are dumb. I mean, I get real dumb when I'm watching a booby streamer. I don't know. I do be watching booby streamers. Don't get me wrong. I do like booby streamers, but I'm just saying I'm not exactly acting like a fivehead when I'm in the chat of a booby streamer. I don't know.
Curious if people's judgments are compromised. I think that we can have conversation about that. So for instance, like a 5-year-old wandering onto your property, I wouldn't expect them to understand the ramifications of what they're doing. Or somebody that's like ultra drunk that stumbles into your house, I wouldn't expect them to understand the ramifications of what they're doing. But for like a... go ahead.
Sorry, what do you think about like the...
So if you come in your living room and you see that the person is naked and they got a sweat worked up and they're on a fucking PCP bend, maybe you just go, hey, what do you... Oh, I see. You're high on PCP. Get the fuck out of here, partner, before I call the police. Like, go sober up. Do you need a place to sleep? You're looking real sweaty. I don't think you know where you are right now. You're in the living room with the baddest motherfucker this side of the Mississippi, all right? And I was about to fucking end you. You're lucky Steven says that I gotta notify you, otherwise I would have fucking put you in the dirt. But now that I know you just simply got an addiction, well, all right, man. Next bowl's on me, brother. You don't gotta steal my TV. They ain't even gonna pay you more than $50. I'll buy you a week's worth. You go ahead, you take a bus down to Albuquerque, get the fuck out of my neighborhood. I'll pay for it. Go steal from somebody else, you know? Maybe that's how you should handle it, bro. I like that, dude.
The fact that like having a gun predisposes you
progressive Alabama
to these sorts of like mishaps in the first place. That we have, what you're essentially establishing here is like, you can figure it out, random dude. You can figure out if extra legal force is required here. Sorry, not extra legal because you think it should be legal, but why you think that this sort of force is required here. I just don't see that as a great idea.
I mean,
But that's because you're not trying to like think outside the box. I feel like he's just saying I don't think it's a good idea, but that's because he's not able to like reason through it very far. Why are you reviewing some gnome fuck debating another gnome fuck when you can be a famous voice actor? That's a good fucking question, dude, because nobody scouted me. The moment I get a phone call that's like, hey, Booksmart-sama, we need you on our newest anime project and fucking we'll pay you $250,000, I'm out. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to be fucking IRL streaming from the set and I'll be like, look what we've accomplished, everybody. This is great. But yeah, that sounds like a very good deal, bro. Instead of reviewing gnomes, maybe, dude. Hi, Booksmarts. Nice viewership, bud. Oh, what's it at? Is it high? Booksmarts, are you going to play the new Resident Evil when it comes out? Maybe. I like scary. Scary sounds fun. Resident Evil is actually scary. Some scary games are just kind of lame, like Phasmophobia.
I don't know.
He's going to leave us. Feels bad, man.
I'll
bring you guys with me, dude.
I don't like the idea of living in a society where weak people can have their shit taken from them by stronger people. That's just like totally unacceptable. That's like a worst case scenario to me. I can't possibly imagine. Like you would have to get me through so many hurdles to say to some poor dude, like watching a big guy break into his garage and just steal his shit and make like 2 or 3 trips to his car doing it. Like you would have to make such a huge argument to me to be able to say like, yeah, that guy needs to just sit there and watch it happen. I just can't imagine that. That's insane to me.
I'd say, is lethal force necessary? Should we not aim for force that is not lethal? Do we not have a moral responsibility, say, to pick up a bat instead of a gun, pick up a knife instead of a gun?
To be fair, I don't think many anime studios are looking for people who can voice act as, quote, inbred hillbilly. Fuck off, dude. I don't think that accent was even inbred hillbilly. I thought he sounded pretty reasonable for having a southern accent, but whatever. Yeah, maybe anime don't really need that very much, though. That is fair.
So knives are horrible for fighting because you put...
Oh, he did a meme here. I have a note about this here. Yeah. So when I say that this dude's not super thoughtful, when I say the Big Joel's not thoughtful, I think that's a very nice way of like explaining when a point seems like it's really half baked and not really thought out. Like it's just kind of like a brain fart. That's kind of sometimes what this dude puts out.
I don't know. I would expect people to... I just don't like the idea of living in a society where weak people can have their shit taken from them by stronger people.
And again, there's Steven reiterating what is a very essential point that's never going to leave his perspective, which is that the strong people can take from weak people.
That just, I don't, that's just like totally unacceptable. That's like a worst case scenario to me. I can't possibly imagine. Like you would have to get me through so many hurdles to say to some poor dude, like watching a big guy break into his garage and just steal his shit and make like 2 or 3 trips to his car doing it. Like you would have to make such a huge argument to me to be able to say like, yeah, that guy needs to just sit there and watch it happen. I just can't imagine that. That's insane to me.
I'd say, is lethal force necessary? Should we not aim for force that is not lethal? Do we not have a moral responsibility, say, to pick up a bat instead of a gun, pick up a knife instead of a gun?
So this is what I mean by not super thoughtful things. I don't know if he has much experience arguing these things or if he's seen, like if he watched more of the recent debates that Steven's done, he wouldn't have probably put forward this kind of argument. But nevertheless, we'll kind of move forward with it. Another set of people that had a really, really good discussion about firearms and self-defense and stuff is A4 Andre and Wicked Supreme. We covered that. We did like a whole review of their conversation, but I think those two made a lot of important ground in discussing like why for self-defense or why for protection you're not going to go for those. You're not going to shoot for the legs. You're not going to try to fight and subdue somebody without lethal force. Like there's a lot of reasons why you don't pick these things, you know, beyond what should obviously come to mind. And I think that's a really good conversation. That's an example of going into that.
So knives are horrible for fighting because you put yourself at a great deal of risk. A bat
sure, they're intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, like the only problem is that like I don't.
Joel is kind of privileged. Like sounds like he's never been robbed, and if he has been, he just got home and instantly replaced his stuff. That's the other thing is it's difficult to remove firsthand experience of theft, right? Like, we talked about it on Supreme Stream. Here, let me bring up my cam here. We talked about it on Supreme Stream, but like I have this gnarly scar on the back of my hand here. You can see, right? And that's from being mugged. I got fucking cut the fuck up when I was in Thailand. So like, like I think having experience being robbed will probably change how you feel about it. Like I really do think if you got mugged or something, you realize why some of the things that you're saying are silly. But it's not helpful when somebody doesn't have that experience to point out the lack of it, though. You know what I'm saying? Because put yourself in their shoes. If somebody was telling you, well, you've never been robbed, you don't really get it. Like, that's not a very satisfying way to end the conversation or to end the dialogue, right? It's not very convincing. It's not very satisfying. It doesn't get the two parties anywhere. So pasty smarts. Yeah. Because remember, the light is very close to the camera and you guys are getting a lot of the light. But yeah, I am a bit pasty, I guess.
I don't know how much responsibility I want to put on the person being violated against the person doing the violating in order to...
I thought Kimiko did that. Yeah, Kimiko did that, and it was the last thing she fucking did. That's why there's no more Kimiko on stream.
De-escalate a situation. That's the problem. It's a lot more personal, but like if I were to compare this to like a woman is potentially being raped by a guy and she pulls out a gun and kills him, I don't think I'd ever...
I'm still traumatized after being robbed at gunpoint. Yeah, like I've had friends who worked at fucking convenience stores and stuff and they got robbed and it really fucked them up. Like, yeah, I empathize with your situation. And I'm not going to lie, it does make me more aware of my surroundings. Like, it was funny. I walked back to a hotel when we were in Georgia. That was maybe like, I don't know, less than 3 miles away from the convention place that we were at. So I walked from the main hotel where the event was to my hotel in the dark at like 2:00 in the morning in Georgia. And everybody was really worried about me, but when I'm walking around, regardless of where I am, I'm paying a lot of fucking attention to sounds and where people are. Ever since that one time that I got mugged or attempted robbery or whatever the fuck you want to call it, when those people threatened me like that, ever since then, I've been very hyper aware. Like I'm fucking Jason Bourne. I'm like paying attention to license plates and I'm fucking looking at people. I'm paying attention if they're looking at me. Like I'm more aware and paranoid of people around me, especially in places I don't know because of that. It doesn't mean I disengage from them. I don't let that fear like hold me back throughout my whole life. I still want to have like a childish innocence about like going out places and experiencing places, but that paranoia is always there and it never goes away. And I don't doubt that is fueled in part by what happened there. Among other kinds of theft that happened to me while I was in Asia, I got stolen from a lot and it really fucked with me. So that might be why I'm more sympathetic to Steven's argument as well and why you might be as a victim of that. So, could be the case.
I'd say to the woman, like, well, hold on. Don't you think you should have tried a knife first? Like, well, no, of course not. Like, she doesn't know if she's going to win with a knife. She doesn't know if she's going to win with a bat. Same thing with a person, like, stealing something from your house or your garage. Like,
violating is a very good verb that you're using there. Not only how traumatizing it is, but how violating it is. The kind of helplessness and, like, wronged feeling that you have when somebody steals from you or they threaten you with a gun or something like that. I don't want to extend this analogy to rape victims or other victims of other crimes, but I imagine having that agency taken away from you, having somebody at a point of threat, whether that's with a knife or a gun or whatever, or just breaking in your fucking house like a crazy person, these kinds of threats on your like autonomy and this kind of feeling violated is like a huge thing looking back on it. And yeah, I think it's something maybe people miss without the experience.
You might get a weapon and go out and try to fight them. You might lose that fight. Now you're fucked. Now you're double fucked. Now you were just going to lose your possessions. Now you're going to get an ass whipping or maybe killed, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would put the onus on a victim to escalate the levels of forces responsibly if they're not guaranteed to end late the encounter. Now, this has some reasonable limits to it. If like a girl in a bikini is in your garage and you're like the fucking Rock or whatever, you probably don't have to shoot this person, right? Like, or if there's like a 10-year-old in your garage or whatever, you won't go out and fucking kill this person because they're too young, right? Of course. But like in general, like, yeah, I wouldn't put the onus on a victim to say that they need to be more responsible with how they escalate force against somebody violating their property, put on notice that they're doing it, that it will be like met with lethal force.
Okay, I guess it's 5:40 here, so I should go soon. I guess what I would say is, yeah, I guess the way I see it, having a huge number of guns that exist with which to dose out lethal blows to people who are stealing your shit is almost certainly not a good bet in the long run when it comes to the people who own the gun particularly. It's not a good bet for their safety.
Yeah, I mean, that's generally true. I mean, just owning a firearm, period.
Also, Caesar, I see your comment about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Even if you feel more confident and you walk around with your head high because you know you could choke somebody out, I don't think that in the moment of being robbed by somebody with a gun or with a knife, everybody, even with training, makes the decision to gamble their life away on challenging that aggressor, right? Because like Steven said, let's say you go in to grab them or something and they're fucking covered in baby oil because they're a kinky weirdo who likes breaking into people's houses, and you fucking slip on your grip and they fucking get a really good cut in on you and you're fucking spewing blood and they hit an artery and you have to keep pressure on it and you can't wrestle anymore. Now all of a sudden, reversal of fortune, you're fucked. God has flipped a fucking coin and it is your time, right? So I don't think that's reasonable, bud. I wouldn't tell other people that. I wouldn't repeat that maybe you should just do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you wouldn't be afraid. Just like try to temper that, bud. That'll be my advice to you. Another bit of my fundamental philosophy is I generally believe that I'll have to live the life of other people at some point. And I like to imagine at moments like this, if I was living your life and that's what you typed into my chat, I would encourage you never to say that to people, especially if they're a victim of that abuse, because it comes off very awful to say that maybe you should just learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and then you might be okay. Just be careful with that one, bro. Keep that one in your back pocket. It's good marketing material for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but unfortunately it's really off-putting, in my opinion.
Predisposes you to all sorts
just
of
learn Krav Maga.
issues, like the fact that you might use it in an encounter, the fact that I think owning a gun doesn't give you any better chance of saving your property than just using a bat in some huge like fucking meta-analysis I saw of like self-defense.
If I had a knife, I would be the one ending up stabbed.
Aiko just fucking commits seppuku, dude. Aiko's like, oh my god, they're breaking into my house. They're just like, what the fuck? This lady is crazy. I gotta put all this stuff down. I gotta stop. I broke into the house of some fucking crazy chick. What's going on here? Frickin' Aiko. Thanks, though.
Kill yourself if you're suicidal. Having it means you're more likely for a child to have an accident with it. Yeah. There's a whole.
But
there's different.
I just
that's
think
a
there's
different.
a huge number of.
Yeah, that's a different kind of argument than like the self-defense argument. If you want to talk about like overall, like should guns exist in America, that's a way different argument. And there's probably really good arguments on both sides of that, where like guns should just be gone completely. But they're here.
Easier to control fear. I get that. I'm saying as a human to another human. Like if you were my little brother, I would pull you aside and I'd be like, hey, keep in mind, when there's people in the chat and me who's telling you that they got mugged, it's an off-color thing to say. You probably shouldn't say it. You probably shouldn't even imply it. Like I don't know if that's what those people need to hear, and I don't know if it's helpful to them. So I'm just trying to help him out, dude. I'm just trying to give him a little bit of human advice. That's all, dude.
Well, it isn't. I guess I'm just saying, like, I guess what I'm just trying to say is guns existing is something that we even would think about contesting in the first place, right? And so to say that somebody has this like this predisposed right to use it in a situation where it is almost guaranteed to escalate the conflict, as most people advise, especially people who are talking about self-defense situations, it's just surprising to me to think it's a great idea.
I don't view escalation as being immoral if you're the person being aggressed on. I'm not comfortable with that language.
Oh, escalation for you too, though. I mean, it's
I know,
more
but
likely
I'm
to
still
end in
not.
your death
I'm
as
still
well.
not sure, but I'm still not comfortable because escalation implies like moral responsibility. When you say escalate, whether you mean to or not, and I'm not saying you're trying to do this, but when somebody says somebody's escalating something, they're assigning a level of like moral culpability to that. You know, if somebody.
Yeah, this is a super tricky thing to explain in the moment, but I would say that this is a good thing to point out here. When you're saying that they escalated it, it's almost like there's an implication that there is a lesser thing that person was obligated to have done. So like, let's say I hear rustling and I hear somebody break something downstairs in my house, and I go and I grab my gun, and of course, because I'm a responsible gun owner, nothing is fucking prepared, and I have to put the fucking thing together and put the fucking magazine inside of it and cock it, and I'm good to go. I go ahead and I walk down my stairs, and
you can't cut to the chase. Drawing your
as
own
I turn
conclusions is the chase.
and I look at the stairs, that motherfucker is like halfway up the staircase and he looks up at me, right? In that moment, you're telling me to do something else. You're saying you're about to escalate this by like threatening that guy's life. So if I say, get out of my house or I'm going to fucking kill you, you know, that's my bad. Whoa, you shouldn't have escalated that. You don't know why that guy is there. Okay, maybe I call out and I go, who is it? Who is that? And he goes, I'm Lenny Kravitz and I'm here to steal your shit, you know, whatever. Or he goes, oh, fuck, somebody's home. And he runs away, right? Maybe you could say that. But I don't know what you're meant to say there. Like, what? That I'm supposed to like, oh, he's unarmed. It would appear he's walking with a limp. He's about 95 pounds. I can take him. And then I fucking, you know, holster my stuff. And like Caesar said, I activate my Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills and I go, like my wife's like, shoot him, and I'm like, fuck it, babe, I can take him, I got this, I fucking Krav Maga, bro, I got it, my Krav Maga, there's no need, let's not escalate this, babe, he just broke into my house, it's not like he fucking threatened our lives or anything, I'll just fucking put him in a chokehold and wait for the police, go ahead and call 911, look outside, get the license plate of his car, let's go ahead and let's handle this, you know, in an orderly way, in a civilized way, okay, he's not a fucking monster, he's just a thief, all right, and I don't even know if he's thieving. He's just in my house, you know. He could have just needed water. He could have gotten the address mixed up. There could be a million explanations, Diane. So let's chill the fuck out and not fucking turn this into something it don't gotta be, all right? Anywho, who are you? Why are you in my house? Like, I don't know, dude. Dude, you need to Krav Maga him and make him a sandwich? Yeah, maybe, dude. And then talk him through his problems? Maybe, dude.
Somebody walks up to you in a bar, punches you, and then takes out a knife, and then you take out a gun and kill the person. Like, did you escalate? Yeah, you kind of did, but like, is that like a moral wrong that you escalated there? Like, I don't think so. Like, pulling out the minimum level of force needed to shut down a violent encounter where someone else is the aggressor.
The minimum level of force available to you, though, like reasonably in the moment. Like, this is the point of having the gun. Like, I don't know, you like. Wicked Supreme, and A4 Andre really got into this in their discussion of the topic, but you should never have that gun out if you don't have the intention of shooting somebody. That is a key part of threatening somebody with a gun, because the moment you have that and that is in the equation, lethal force is there. Lethal force is on the table, which means if you fuck up this engagement, that other person knows that you wanted to threaten their life, right? Like, this is an escalation, right? But like, if that is the means you have of defending yourself and that's what you have available to you and that is what you choose, like, I don't know if you can shit on somebody for that decision. That's kind of the purpose of it. You don't know what that person has that's breaking into your house. What if I go for a baseball bat and I look like a fucking Pepega idiot because I popped that corner and he's got a fucking shotgun and he's on the staircase? Am I able to adequately threaten him with the bat when he's armed with a shotgun? No. So am I going to approach it with my fucking holstered pistol and everything put away and my knives in my fucking trousers and my fucking baseball bat on my back and go in unarmed, fucking empty hands, fucking Kenpo for my martial arts people? Am I going to go in fucking Kenpo with open palms because I don't know what this guy has going on? I'm not a fucking police officer. You're putting a lot of fucking like requirements on somebody who is having a lot of their autonomy violated right now by somebody breaking into their fucking house or stealing their shit. I don't know.
I think is more accurately reflective of what's happening rather than just saying like, oh, well, you just escalated the situation, right? Like the other guy is aggressing. Like the initial aggressor, I think, bears the weight of that encounter and where it could possibly go to. That's how I would view it. Like if I break into somebody's house, like I would be prepared to fight to the death. Like I know that if I break into somebody's house and they catch me, they might kill me and like I might have to kill them. Like that seems so reasonable. That seems so understandable in my mind. I can't imagine anybody thinking any different.
Right.
Like if I break,
Like if I see
Steven
Steven in my house, I would be so fucking scared because Steven is either there to kill me or he knows he's going to have to kill me the moment I see him. Because Steven thinks if he is going to jump the line of breaking into my house, he's prepared for a fight to the death. So if I see Steven in my house, maybe I don't even warn him, bro. Maybe I have to blast. I'm just kidding. Get a fucking video game. But like that's I don't know. That's a worrisome attitude to have going into everything. And again, I don't think thieves have that attitude when they're going into stuff. They think they're going to fucking fight to the death. I don't know. And if you are, that's kind of scary. And thieves that are fucking the scariest kinds that think they might reasonably have to kill the homeowners when they break in or something. That's fucking pretty scary. I'm Steven and I'm here to kill you with logic. Yeah, maybe, dude. That'll be when the bridge burns, bro. When he's in my fucking living room. No, he'd probably be sitting there with like a drink and he's like, why don't you have a seat right there? Oh, don't worry. We'll get into it in a second. I was super interested in some shit you were saying on your review of my debate. I thought maybe we want to have a private conversation about it. Wink, a wink. Go ahead and sit down right there. Then I would be pretty scared, dude.
Someone's house to steal their shit and they woke up and caught you. Do you think they're just going to politely ask you to leave? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like,
what do I think is going to happen? I don't know. I guess I would be worried that they were going to kill me for sure. Yeah. Oh wait, that's not so. So even without like, which by the way, so if he wakes up and he sees you, then he can kill you, or no? What's the deal with that? Or I guess he has to say, yeah, he has to say like, I have a gun. I'm a big beefy boy. I can. But if he did, oh whatever. I'm sorry. I'm losing myself.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the person's put on notice. I don't think it's entirely unreasonable for that person to assume that like they're gonna get blown away if they're trying to like break into somebody's house and steal their shit. I think that's super reasonable, and I don't think society falls into this horrible paradox where like, oh no, like what are we gonna do if we kill people that are trying to steal things from people? Like, well, people probably shouldn't be trying to steal things from people at all. Like, I don't think that's that horrible of a thing. Like, what if this leads to a society where nobody is breaking?
Did he have a stroke? Me or the dude on the telly? Did I do something? Never give warning seems insane. Booksmarts, is the on notice part of the argument instantly dropped if the robber has a visible gun, or do you just shoot on sight at that point? It's a very tricky question. I'd be interested to see how Steven would answer it. For me in particular, if I see somebody in my house and I think they have a gun, I'm going to say something, but if they make even the slightest movement of bringing that gun up, I will unload on them. That would be where I would be at with it. It'd be very much based on how they react in the moment to that. And that sucks because that's putting a lot on what will be a knee-jerk reaction from them, but the police do the same thing. You bring that gun up like any amount, and I'm afraid I have to unload on you. You had the wrong fucking reaction to my call out. Like, that's where I would be at. I would make sure I have a fucking shot before I say a goddamn thing, and then I would say it. But if that gun moves in a crazy way, I'm afraid I'd have to, because that's a really weird situation. And if you came into my house with a gun, breaking into it, stealing my stuff, that signals to me that you knew what you were here to do. Like, you were either here to threaten me with that gun to some extent, to threaten the homeowners, or you're there with that gun to like engage in a shootout with me. I'm sorry, but if you have that gun, you have just like pushed this to like the extent of the notification thing for me personally.
Breaking in and stealing anything at all, like, okay.
I'll try to steal shit.
Too much risk. What if you miss? I mean, he's going to kill me. If I don't shoot at him, he could easily, I mean, we both have the equalizer, okay? And it comes down to who's able to engage the equalizer the quickest at that point. And that's a very scary situation to be in. What if you get shot? I accept the risk of getting shot the moment I find somebody in my fucking living room that's broken into my house with a gun in their hand. I accept that I might be shot the second I see that, which is why that notification is a big-ass courtesy from me, right? So I don't understand, Chad. I think you're fucking with me right now.
all the time, not just breaking in. Like they steal shit constantly, right?
What do you mean by that, I guess?
Well, I don't know. There's muggings that happen. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah, and I think all of those should be defended by lethal
right?
force as well. Yeah, if somebody's trying to mug you or some shit, then you have the ability to defend yourself. Yeah.
Drawing your own conclusions.
But again, this is maybe I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's difference in backgrounds.
And again, like, this is something I think Big Joel should think about, right? Like, how many muggings happen where the other person is armed with a gun, where the victim is armed with a gun? And are you really going to tell the victim not to use it in those cases? You're either divorced from the experience of being robbed or, like, something's not clicking. But I feel like maybe an empathic talk with him about it might drag him out of his current beliefs. But he has a really strong principle about the life over property thing. And I think he's just trying to apply that in all situations, even if he feels yucky about it.
Or where we grew up or whatever, like if I mug somebody, I would be fully prepared that I need to kill this person because they might kill me. Like I would never imagine that I could mug somebody and then like, hold on, nope, I've got a gun. It's like, fuck, you're right. All right, dude, I'll see you later. Like, fuck it, man. Like you got me. And then I just walk away.
You can imagine a situation, right, where like a pickpocket is going around town, takes your wallet, right, runs down. As he's running away from you, you bring out your gun and say, I'll fucking shoot you. And then he keeps running and then you shoot him in the back or whatever, right? Yeah, to me, I would take that as a violent and ridiculous escalation of the situation.
Sure. Honestly. And then on the flip side, I would say that it's absolutely ridiculous.
I just picture my high and anxious self having to deal with this shit. I don't have the time or wherewithal to grant mercy. Well, just think of normal you. What kind of dumb shit are you thinking about as like a wage cuck slave person in a capitalist society? What are you thinking about? Oh, I can't wait to fuck this bitch. Oh, I'm having a problem with my wife. Oh, I can't wait for tomorrow at work. Oh, I can't wait to see the game with the boys. Whatever the fuck you're thinking about. You have all these thoughts bouncing around in your head. You come home and everything has to stop the moment you find somebody in your living room that's not meant to be there. Everything stops, right? The whole world stops the moment this crazy thing happens. You have all this other stuff, whether it's I'm smoking weed and I'm listening to music like you're saying and you're super anxious, or whether it's like I'm thinking about like what I'm doing for the day and like what I plan to do tomorrow and yada yada. All of that doesn't matter the moment that this person does this thing, and it puts you in a very weird fucking Twilight Zone type situation. And I think it's difficult to even expect that you would have super conscious control over what you choose to do. And if you have a gun and you're armed and you have that in your grip and that the right way and you got all that set, I don't know how much of an expectation I can place on that person to think like this way or that way or abstractly or philosophically. Like all that needed to have been done before that moment. And we're going to see what kind of person that person is when it comes down to it. Because no amount of logic and reasoning even means that you engage in this way. Steven could have his gun and he could come into his house and there could be someone in there, and Steven could actually just wind up being chicken shit and he can't shoot somebody and he won't do it. And regardless of what logic he thinks about it, he's just not able to pull the trigger. Okay, and he just puts it away, and like he says, he fucks off and waits for the police to come. That could be any of us, even the people arguing that they would shoot somebody. It could be when it comes down to it, you can't do it. It's a very weird situation. So to philosophize it and stuff is fun for like the discussion about like where your beliefs stand, but like realistically, is it helpful? Maybe not, dude.
Ridiculous that a pickpocket should be allowed to run around and rob people with impunity because he's faster than anybody else. I think that's insane to me. Like,
do you feel like those types of theoretical conversations often overstate how competent the average person is? I think most philosophical discussions overestimate how competent the average person is, which is why I don't enjoy engaging in them. I think philosophy is like talking about a language of thinking that few people engage in at all, and even fewer people can actually like understand. So, you know, I don't think it's a helpful way of viewing a lot of stuff. No. And I do think it's fairly divorced from reality a lot of the time. Because
there's no tears lost for a guy that is stealing from people, knowing that he might get killed doing it, and then he does and he gets killed. Like, fuck it. I mean, like, damn, you're stealing shit from people. What do you expect to happen?
Yeah, I guess I don't, for me, it's not really about what he should or shouldn't expect to happen. It's just about the fact that his life is of something to be sacred.
There you go. So there's some kind of sacred thing about life that's always going to be worth more than the property. And unless the flame of that person's consciousness is threatening that of other people, it's difficult to justify putting it out, right? And this is a very fundamental belief of Big Joel that it's just going to keep him from changing his mind on this at all. And until we deal with that or find a way to have that in the same picture as everything else, it's very difficult. We either have to get rid of that or we need to create a bridge between that and Destiny's way of viewing the situation.
Something
Why?
sacred in the
He's
fact
not
that he's
treating
alive
his, why?
person.
Wait, why? He's not treating his life sacred. Why the fuck should I? If
Yeah, I
he's
just don't
willing
really
to
believe in,
forfeit
like,
his
consequences
life,
for actions like this.
What?
Generally, yeah.
it's not about. It's not even
like-
about consequence. It's just about some guy protecting their shit from being stolen from somebody else. An extension of who you are. Like, I'm not going to treat some guy's life with sacred shit if he's not going to treat his own life with sacred shit. If you break into somebody's house.
But this is, again, the assumption that that person understood the gamble they were getting into when they broke into your stuff, which breaking into your house, yes, but stealing other things, not necessarily. I don't think people breaking into cars think they're going to get shot breaking into the cars, depending on the neighborhood they're in, of course. But I don't think that's always an assumption that thieves are making when they're thieving.
House, clearly your life doesn't mean that much to you if you're willing to take that level of risk. So why should the victim have to like value the perpetrator's life more than he values his own life?
Do you think you'd have an opportunity to talk to Big Joel? I don't know who Big Joel is. If he'd want to talk, I'd be down to. If he wants like another swing at changing his mind on it, but I wouldn't seek it out. No, I'm not interested in changing his mind on it. Just reviewing the conversation.
Criminals are, a lot of them are pretty impulsive, right? I mean, they're not legitimately having the inner thought every time. Oh, this is going to be the night. They're definitely not. They're acting impulsively much of the time, right? No,
I mean, it depends. I mean, there are crimes of passion, but burglary is usually like a
really big YouTuber. Okay, let's see. Big Joel.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, this guy. Yeah, I recognize this guy. Let's see, what stuff of his did I watch? I know I watched something from him. I think I watched.
My version.
I don't
of being
remember what I
polite is
watched
to, at
from
all
him.
costs, avoid
Thanks
rudeness.
for that.
And it feels like I have a much better chance of making that work by shutting up than by speaking.
Thanks, dude. All right, I'm going to play an ad real quick. The way that you don't get ads is you do what you just heard on the screen. Somebody subbed. You can do that with your Twitch Prime account for free once a month. I really appreciate that. Or you could spend the just $5 that it costs. It's only $5. Bloop. All righty, let's go ahead and continue, though.
like determined thing. Like, I don't think somebody
No, I mean,
impulsively just breaks into somebody's
even
house,
if-
right?
Criminals, we always think that increasing jail sentences, for instance, is an amazing way to deter criminals. The reality of the situation, they just don't think they're going to get caught.
Yeah,
I
of
mean,
course. But again, this is a different thing. So when we talk about like prison, for me, I think that prison should exist as a form of rehabilitation. However, on an individual level, I don't think that one individual is responsible for rehabilitating somebody aggressing towards them. This is an institutional level versus a person-to-person level. I think there's a different responsibility.
Bobby McSwooger.
I wasn't trying to get into whether or not prisons are just. I was just trying to say that people who commit crimes are generally not doing the cost value
Oh, sure. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's up to a victim to try to determine the intent of the criminal. Much the same way that I wouldn't put any personal, like, bodily crime. Like, maybe you're getting raped by a guy, like...
Whoa! Gifted subs. How many? It doesn't tell me. It just has plural. Nice. Thanks, Anon. We appreciate that. Thanks. There you go.
You have to form these opinions yourself.
Wow.
You can't cut to the
10?
chase. Drawing your own
Jesus
conclusions
Christ.
is the chase.
Dodge the sub? What do you mean? Avoiding holy shit! Avoiding ads is not a victimless crime. This conversation is a case in point of why mouthing off on Twitter is dumb. You say 100 words about some shit you barely thought about. True. Damn, bro.
But act not breeds.
Damn, bro. Paused on the analogy. We'll play it back, dude. We'll play it back. The public prevalence of gun culture varies wildly from rural area to urban. In the urban town, the gun range is probably a big part of the community. In a city, gun range is an oddity into the gun realm. That's true, too. It's not normal to go shooting where I'm from, that's for sure. A gun range is like a special thing for certain people. And out in Montana and other places that I've been to, it seems like guns are like a normal part of things. So yeah, that could be a huge, factor of things. Thanks for all these, dude. I appreciate it.
Like, fuck, maybe he's just is really fucking frustrated. Maybe this guy's been a virgin for like 30 years or whatever, and he's just like out of his mind fucking...
Time, right? No?
It depends. I think that prison should exist as a form of rehabilitation. However, on an individual level, I don't think that one individual is responsible for rehabilitating somebody aggressing towards them. This is an institutional level versus a person-to-person level. I think there's a different response.
So there he's saying, you know, in much the same way that this guy wanted to offload like determinations about punishment and stuff for this person who's stealing shit onto institutions.
Yes, I
he's
love
saying
this.
here
For mysterious reasons, I love this.
Rehabilitating these people should be something that is a job of the institutions, right? So that's coming up again.
Responsibility.
I wasn't trying to get into whether or not prisons are just. I was just trying to say that people who commit crimes are generally not doing the cost value.
My version.
Oh, sure, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's up to a
Rudeness.
victim to try to
And it
determine
feels
the
like I have a
intent
much
of
better
the
chance
criminal.
of making that
Much the
work
same
by
way that I wouldn't put
shutting
any
up than
personal,
by
like,
speaking.
bodily crime like that. Like, maybe you're getting raped by a guy, like, fuck.
See, including this concession, but then giving extra context is super good. I like that. Steven is being really charitable here, and I appreciate
Yes,
it.
I love
he's
this.
just
For
really-
mysterious reasons, I love this.
Fucking frustrated. Maybe this guy's been a virgin for like 30 years or whatever, and he's just like out of his mind fucking horny. Like, I don't think that would be a good excuse.
We started
to
a
use,
sub
like,
train. Holy shit! Nice job, guys.
when somebody's like being assaulted by somebody, right? Like, you don't really care about the intent of the person at that point. They're violating your autonomy. So whether it's by stealing your shit or by
Also, if you did just get a subscription from this anonymous gifter, thanks the anonymous gifter, or you have subscribed in the last, like, you know, whatever that the stream has been going on, make sure to refresh the page. That way you'll have it updated and you won't see any more ads. Otherwise, you'll still get ads.
by violating your body.
The guilt was eating me up inside. A super chat, $5 from Nana. Thanks. The guilt was eating me up inside. Interesting. My name is a space. Thank you for tier 1. Unfortunately, though, I got to let you know, your name is a lot of letters, my friend. I don't see a space in sight.
What the fuck?
There ain't no space in sight, brother.
Like, I don't think that
Oh,
I don't
that's
think that
why
it's
I
on
got
the
the ad,
victim
yeah.
to try to assess the state, the mental well-being or whatever of the person doing it beyond like a reasonable thing, right? Like, again, if a guy is like blackout drunk and he stumbles into your house, you probably shouldn't be killing this guy because clearly he doesn't know what's going on.
Okay, so I guess there's just a bridge that's just not going to be, because
Drawing your
I
own
guess at the end of the
conclusions
day,
is
and you
the
said this in the
case.
debate too, you just think about robbery.
I know you guys want me to respond to his rape analogy thing here. I mean, it's done better than it normally is. I think it ends up fitting in the conversation well.
The person at that point, they're violating your autonomy. So whether it's by stealing your shit or by violating your body, like, I don't think that it's on the victim to try to assess the state, the mental well-being or whatever of the person.
See, he's able to tie it around a lot easier here. He doesn't have to start describing a whole horrible situation about a woman at a party and somebody comes up. Like, I think the way that he delivers analogies like this and the way that he's delivered this exact analogy on the same topic before was not good. But here it is good. He's making sure to couple like an eighth of talking about the analogy, an eighth of mentioning sexual assault, with like 7/8 of explaining why that's an apt comparison, with 7/8 of explaining the
You have to
variable
form these
that
opinions
is a part
yourself.
of in
You
his
can't cut
logic,
to the
right?
chase. Drawing your own
And I think the
conclusions
ratio he
is the
has here
chase.
is much better than it normally is, and it ended up being more palatable to the Big Joel person. Seems like, I would assume, but yeah, generally better, a better introduction of the rape thing.
Person doing it beyond like a reasonable thing, right? Like, again, if a guy is like blackout drunk and he stumbles into your house, you probably shouldn't be killing this guy because clearly he doesn't know what's going on.
Okay, so I guess there's just a bridge that's just not going to be, because I guess at the end of the day, and you said this in the debate too, you just think about robbery as something that is, on a par with.
For Bookfucker, Nate the Younger, dude, what a chatter Nate the Younger is. What a clipper Nate the Younger is. Great guy, great guy.
Sexual assault, and you even right, like it's not as bad, but it's somewhere in that realm, right? And to me, I think unless somebody's legitimately taking away your means of survival, yeah, I guess I just can't go there. I can't evaluate. I can't think of it as that much of a crime. As bad as that.
If somebody, so like, let's say that music is really important to somebody, and let's say that they like work, and they save up their money, and after 4 months, they're able to buy. In my day, it would have been like a Walkman, one of those little CD no-skip players or whatever, or maybe like an iPod or something, and they're finally able to save it. And this is like the one little fucking ray of sunshine they have in their life. And let's say that somebody manages to break into their car, and as they come out from work, they see this guy in their car, and they see him go to pick his iPod up, and for whatever reason, this guy carries a gun with him, and he's like, dude, you can't take that. Like, This is like one of the only things I have in my life that actually like makes me happy. Like everything else in my life sucks. You think that that guy should just watch the other dude walk off with his shit because it would be immoral to shoot that guy.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that. I mean, I definitely think there should be.
Like, I know that there are a lot of good analogies or good examples you could use. You guys mentioned family heirlooms being some of the better examples you heard him make during the debate. We're right at the end here, so it's okay to pause, champ it. Another one that I think is good is an animal. Like, if somebody had my dog in their arms, or they were threatening to take my dog, like if they were gonna steal my car with like my dog inside, I don't know, like, you know, pull on different heartstrings for different people. There's lots of different ways you could go, whether it's an animal or something else, you know.
Be infrastructures in place.
No, don't.
Right?
There is no infrastructure in place. You're never getting that iPod back.
Yeah, I definitely do think you should let him go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I guess that's it.
Like if he threw my dog into his fucking like Forerunner or something, and then he was like, "What are you gonna do about it, huh? You gonna fight me? You gonna be a big man? You gonna shoot that gun? That gun's too small for you, fucking chicken shit." Like if they were doing all that and they're like puffing out their chest to me and they're walking away from the car with my fucking dog in it and they're threatening that they're gonna take it, they know I'm not gonna do anything. I'm sorry, but that motherfucker's dead. He's dead to rights, dude. That motherfucker's gone. That's unacceptable to me. But you know, you could, oh hey, maybe you should just take the license plate down and report it. I mean, you might get your dog back at some point. Like, I don't fucking give a fuck about your stupid morality shit, bro. I'm definitely murking that dude. He's fucking stealing my dog. Fuck off. Like, that's irreplaceable. This motherfucker's stupid enough to come and steal, like, my pet. How am I supposed to know he's going to care for it? How am I supposed to know he's not going to hurt that thing? Like, that's a part of my family, and he's fucking taking it? I don't fucking think so, dude. I'm blasting him. I'm sorry. I'm not going to let harm come onto this thing that, like, doesn't know any better, can't even recognize the threat in a gun, and I'm going to let this guy fucking steal my, you know, like, it's not fucking happening. I'm not letting him fucking violate the innocence of my fucking animals and shit. Not happening, dude.
People in your audience were so surprised it's 5:40. Yeah, I'm in London right now. That's why it's late, guys. They were so distrusting of it. Okay. I guess this was a good talk.
All right. Yep. I'll see you later. Have fun. Peace out. Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye. This has to be a troll comic, right? I think I was friends with this guy, or he followed me on Twitter. This comic can't be real, right? Sometimes I wonder if different backgrounds like predispose you to looking at property in different ways.
We're just gonna move past this. Anyhow, we need to make sure we keep Moot away from Booksmart's dogs. Yeah, don't steal my fucking dog, dude. I don't care if you think it's some friendly fucking thing. I don't like that shit. Don't steal my fucking dog. You ever steal my dog, you're fucked. DGGers told me you complimented my clipping skills. Good stuff. Yeah, I saw your comment. You had like a girl with a camera, and you said for Booksmarts or whatever, and I was like, that's cute. This is like Inception or something, dude. He's fucking in the dream with us. Yeah, I appreciate your clipping skills. You create some fucking fire clips, dude. All right, I think we're all done with this. I'm getting kind of tired too. How long have we been going? It has to have been a while, I would imagine. 3 hours. Woof. Woof. Oof. Oh, that's good shit. 3 hours. Well, I'd say, Steven, I'm here to kill you with logic. Yeah, maybe, dude. That'll be when the bridge burns, bro. When he's in my fucking living room. No, he'd probably be sitting there with like a drink, and he's like, "Why don't you have a seat right there?" Okay, nice, dude. Nice clip. All right. Where do you guys want to go for the night? Where are we thinking, huh? Who's online that you guys like? Because I think I'm just about done. I know I wanted to cover the New York Times thing, but I'm still getting back into the swing of streaming. I'm tired, dude. I'm tired. Fractal,
breathtaking.
Tuvia Andy.
I shall call him.
Let's see.
Mini-Me.
Thanks for the sub. We have Tiberia, Zenkarni, Fractal, Zerka, Will, and Botez. I don't have a lot of people
My
in my
version of
follow
being
list.
polite is to at all
Booksmarts
costs
is streaming.
avoid
Yeah,
rudeness.
I'm
And it feels like I have a much
100
better chance
viewer
of
just
making
chatting.
that work by shutting up than by
Zane
speaking.
Carney. You guys want Zane? All right, we're going Zane. I like Zane. Oh man, I wish I could talk to Zane at some point. I always use you guys to do my evil bidding. If you guys could tell Zane I want to talk to him at some point. let's fucking exert some market forces here. /raid Zane Carney. I'll use my social capital, dude. All right, everybody, hop in. Zane's pretty cool. He does music stuff. If you sub, he does like a little song. It's really cute. I hope you guys have a good time there. He's a hoot to watch. I might hang around for a little bit. Hope you guys had a good time. I'll see y'all later, and enjoy. There we go. Raid set. For my YouTube people, I love you guys. Thanks for choosing to watch on YouTube. I appreciate it. You get this little bit at the end before I head out. But thank you.